I just volunteered you for graduation. You're going to be in the stands inspecting everybody's what they're going to ask you to do. You're going to have the job. They're going to cough on you, and then they'll decide if they where the fuck am I? There you are.
Hold on. Okay, hold on. We're actually on right now. It doesn't matter. I'm going to get something. Okay, just hold on. It's not real yet, folks. So just hold on. For Christ's sake.
With uh, uh, doing very well. Okay, interesting weekend here in Arlington, Northern Virginia. We began a limited phase one uh, of the release from this pandemic. So yeah, it was an interesting week, and of course, Mr. Trump, as always, was giving us plenty to talk about tonight. And really, Donald Trump may not be making America great, but he certainly is for those of us who don't like him. He's kind of the gift that keeps on giving if we don't like him and we talk about him. It certainly gives us something to talk about each and every day, let alone each and every week.
Yes, indeed. Well, it's good to see you, Dave. And it has been a very big week, politically speaking. Lots of things have happened. But tonight, I think we'd like to focus on Joe Biden and his vice presidential pick. Because aside from the pandemic, that's been the big news within the media. And to start, I'd like to show us a clip, show everybody a clip. This comes from Joy Reid on MSNBC, and she is interviewing Charlemagne the God, and we'll comment afterwards.
Biden, but the Democratic Party in general just takes for granted that, well, the black people are with us, so we don't really have to give them anything else. They're going to vote for us regardless. Look, they voted for Joe Biden in overwhelming numbers, 6 in 10 black voters, particularly in southern states. They all voted for Joe Biden. We don't need to offer anything more. Do you worry that that is the attitude that Democrats are taking toward the black community?
I mean, I know that's the attitude, you know. I mean, that's why I don't even care about the words and the lip service, and the apology is cool, but the best apology is actually a black agenda. You know, they got to make some real policy commitments to black people. We got to stop acting like the fact that blacks are overrepresented in America when it comes to welfare, poverty, unemployment, homelessness, drug addiction, crime, coronavirus. Like, that's no accident. Like, the whole function of systemic racism is to marginalize black people. And as the great Dr. Claude Anderson says in the book Powernomics, white society has an out of sight, out of mind attitude about racism, and they don't like to have any discussions of substance about systemic racism. So when you have black people who have the nerve, the audacity, the unmitigated gall to act like citizens and demand something of our votes, it's a problem. Like it's like you got whites telling us to stay in our place, and you got black people saying, "Oh, stop! Now is not the time. You're going to get Trump reelected." It has to come to a point where we stop putting the burden on black voters to show up for Democrats and start putting the burden on Democrats to show up for black voters.
And what joining me now is Charlotte.
Okay. Dave?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So we shouldn't have any type of problem with the audio right now. So anyway, Dave, you heard Charlemagne and what he said. I know my opinion, but I'm going to ask you first. In general, do you agree with him?
Well, let me read something I don't usually read. I usually try to talk off the top of my head, but I wrote this post maybe an hour. I guess actually it says an hour here on my personal Facebook page, and I'll kind of lead into that if you give me the permission to do that.
Sorry about that, folks. We got cut off here. Wi-Fi.
My theory is that's always Donald Trump cutting us off.
Okay. So start from the beginning, Dave, on that.
He's completely incompetent, but he's not completely. So I'm going to go with the Donald Trump thing. All right. As I started again, I'm going to read something that I wrote, put on my personal Facebook page about an hour before we went on air. Being black in America should not be a death sentence. Let me repeat that for anyone who didn't get it the first time. Being black in America should not be a death sentence. And one more time, just for emphasis. Being black in America should not be a death sentence. Being black in America should not be a reason for a white woman breaking a dog law to falsely summon police, claiming hysterically that she was fearful for her life at the hands of a black man who had simply asked her to place her dog on a leash and was filming her crazed response. Being black in America should not allow two gun-toting Georgia redneck thugs to gun you down and kill you because you were jogging and you didn't follow what these vigilante would-be neighborhood protectors had ordered you to do. And I say this as someone who has benefited from white privilege and every other privilege America offers for 6 decades. I am a white, heterosexual male who was raised in an upper middle class family with 2 working parents and was able to attend and graduate with a university degree, and I put this in quotes, lottery-winning combination, which of course shows, my pejorative take on kind of my background there, that has opened so many doors for me that still remain locked and closed to others of a different race, gender, ethnicity, religion, economic status, or sexual preference. Of course, I am grateful for all that has been given to me, but if anything, my undeserved fortune demands that I speak out against injustice in any form, that I hold those in power over others to the highest of standards, and that I commit to standing with the powerless, with the voiceless, and with all those groups weakened by decades of neglect, abuse, fear, and hate. I hope you will join with me today and every day in clearly calling out stop. Enough is enough. It is long past time for change. I'm only one, and you are only one, but we can join with others to become many. We may not be able to change the entire world, but working together, maybe we can change the small parts of the world we live in and make it better. Not just for ourselves and our time, but for our children and our grandchildren and all the children yet to come. Now, you asked me before, was Charlemagne the God correct? Unfortunately, yes. Okay. Now, I've never been black. That might come as a shock. No, of course it doesn't. So I always feel a little bit of reticence talking about black folk in any sense, because I think sometimes to experience certain things, you need them. I brought up my white privilege. The only time I've ever in my life ever really experienced anything, it was so minute. In my late high school, well, more my college years and a little bit past it, I had really long hair. And of course, hair was a big divider in the country. And I always tell this story. It's basically true of what happened. I went to Villanova University. I lived off campus. I didn't have a car. So I had to hitchhike 4 miles to school every day. Now, hitchhiking, I don't advise that for anyone necessarily today. But the late 60s, early 70s, different time period. And one weekend, my roommate decided that he, for some strange reason, probably influenced by what we were smoking and taking at the time, thought that maybe he wanted to see if he could cut hair. And in a weakened condition, I said yes, and he just butchered my head. It was horrible. So I decided, I went to a barber, got it all cut off. So I had it down to my shoulders, and now not quite as short as yours, Brian, but for that time, maybe more of a shock than that. Mm-hmm. I had one tie to my name. I said, I'm going to really have a whole personality, sartorial change. I wore the tie. I stood on the street corner. The guy picked me up. And we're riding on. We started talking, and he said, where are you going? I said, Villanova. He says, that's great. I'm going to Paoli. I'll be going right by the school. I can let you off right there. Because what happened, the road I went up, it was Haverford Road, and then it would run into Lancaster Avenue, which is where Villanova is located. And a lot of times it would take 2 rides to get me there. So I said, thank you very much. And we were chatting and about whatever. And he just just said, he said, normally I don't pick people up. And I said, well, thank you for picking me up. That's right. And here's where the interesting part comes in. He says, around this time, I come by here every day, and or Monday through Friday, not every day, Monday through Friday. And he said, I've seen this guy stand on that corner where you were, and my God, I wouldn't pick him up at all. What a sleazy, scurvy-looking individual. And I said, there are people like that. Now, of course, my smile was reserved for him because he was talking about me. And he used that. I mean, that's such a minor thing. With those minorities in America go through daily, but it does make a point. So many people judge other people by what they see, right? And I think it begins there. So now you have to be careful, as I always say. You can't say all. The moment you say all black people, all white people, all gay people, all tall people, you're wrong. There's always going to be exceptions. But certainly, I think America's treatment of minorities, whether we're talking about Native Americans in the beginning, one of America's original sins, its second was slavery, whether we move on and talk about its treatment of women, gay people, the disabled, whatever. So yeah, there's some truth to what he said. Now we want to examine tonight, how does that affect America? How does that affect Joe Biden? How does that affect the presidential race? But yes, I would say, in essence, what he said, I would concur with.
All right. So I want to go a little bit more deeply into this. I mean, hold on. I think we're getting some background. Okay. I'm going to go more deeply into this. A lot of people would say, Dave, that, when it comes down to it, a decision must be a decision based on what is the right thing to do. And in this election period already, as you and I have discussed, you have to be pragmatic about things. So Joe Biden was neither a candidate whom I really liked, nor you.
Correct.
But we knew that he was pragmatically the guy that we need at this point in time. There's really no other choice. And I was thinking that, look, maybe Elizabeth Warren would be a good VP choice. Maybe even someone like Andrew Cuomo, who's maybe riding the wave now for the job he's done through the pandemic.
Unfortunately, it won't be Andrew Cuomo unless he decides to change sexes. I mean, Mr.
Right.
Biden is
well, that's right, because Biden said.
I mean, I understand why Joe Biden did it. It was a smart move. But of course, as a politician, you should always try to keep your options open. But I'm not disputing what Mr. Biden did. But again, nobody saw Mr. Cuomo rise to the occasion.
Right. But looking at it now, I think just like we have said to the ultra left that, if you don't vote for Biden, you are essentially a Trumper. Maybe not in name, but you're going to help him out. But I think at this point in time, we must have a black candidate. Black candidate, and I think the only question is which candidate and which state is the most important to Joe Biden. Would you consider that to be a rational thought?
Well, I think there's a couple things. We've said it 1,000 times. We've heard it 1,000,000 times. This is the most important election of our lifetime. For me, this is okay, and I think for every American. I can't think of one. Abraham Lincoln's, of course, his second election would influence the Civil War in the Union. FDR, maybe, in terms of getting us out of the Depression and taking us through World War II. Most of the others were after the fact. You know what I mean? It was, something like that. But this is very big. So that's number one. Number two, there are people, and I put myself in this category. I'm wearing a shirt tonight. I'll stand up later and show it. It's anyone but Trump 2020. And that's literally how I feel. Okay. When you have a fever that is high enough to kill you, but it's not necessarily as bad as the two aches in your leg, you still have to take care of the fever first, right? And Donald Trump is both the symptom of an illness and an illness within himself. But I understand that's not enough for some people, right? I understand it. So now, Mr. Biden, working with the best minds he can come up with, he hasn't called me yet. Hey, Joe, I'm available. I'm around here if you need me. I know you're in Delaware, but I know where that is. I can get up there now. But they're going to look at the best team. And I think one of the other interesting things about this that makes it, it's kind of like what would I say? I hate to. Well, it's almost like a ping pong match, and the ball goes here, and then it goes there, and then it goes back. Okay, so we've already said most important. Well, that's true. Now we're saying, but here's something else. If it's the most important, then it should be anybody but Trump. But Joe Biden's age, and the fact that he's fairly indicated he'll be a one-term president, no guarantees, right? But certainly, with his age and stuff. Then then you kind of know going in, which you should know all the time. But this time you're voting for the Democratic candidate who should be, barring anything unforeseen, the front runner to succeed if Mr. Biden were to win. So now you're looking at a couple things which are often different, Brian. One is, what is the candidate who is best for me to win? And what is the candidate best for me to succeed me, right? And they're not always the same person.
Right. Great point. I mean,
initially, yeah, and certainly interrupt it, Brian, because I can talk all night.
No, I had to interrupt that because just like a piece of music, a rest is important because it identifies and accentuates. What you just said was really important. I hope everybody heard that.
Well,
and if this
since it was so important, why don't you repeat it so I don't have to use my
Well, basically what you're saying is there is a candidate you can choose who helps you win a state or an election. And there's also the correct candidate whom will succeed you.
Right, and be a better president. Now, so let's look at, we don't know. There's been, about a dozen names proposed, I guess. And we're
going to go over those, but yes, roughly a dozen names.
10 or 12 names. And I'm sure there's people being put into the field that we don't know about, kind of surreptitiously coming in. But of course, with any candidate, even Donald Trump, candidates have advantages and disadvantages. So you say, wait a minute, Dave, well, you have said you despise everything about Donald Trump. And indeed I do. But I can look at him as a candidate. He brought something that I think was very, very important to his victory. He was an outsider, a complete political outsider. What people should realize now is he was a buffoon in his previous life, and now he's a buffoon leading our country. But from that point, if you wanted somebody who had no political ties, Donnie Boy was your guy, right? So we look at these things. And I think too, you have to look at it and caution. I'm not a political analyst. I mean, I'm just a guy who kind of likes politics and hangs in Washington, D.C. and gets the chance to talk to a few people from time to time. But I think initially I thought, for Joe Biden, I thought, a black candidate, right? I think was a pretty solid. And you have some good. Kamala Harris, you have Stacey Abrams, both of which bring things to the table. Then I looked at his strong showing, which of course was, Miss Reed and I want to say Kid Charlemagne the God, referred to. And so, Biden did well, but, would he do better, with a black candidate? Is it something that was, temporary? Then you throw in what I call the X factor of this election. And that is America's most popular political couple, and that's Barack Obama. Anybody's listening, or anybody wants to dispute that, I'd love to discuss with you. I'm always love discussing when I know I'm right, and that's right. There's no political couple in America right now, and who is as popular as Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. I can't say that for all history. The Kennedy, Jackie, and John were extremely popular in their time. Certainly there's been other, but for this time. And of course, if paid any attention to the past few years, they are black. So that's another factor that enters in. Do you think that they can work hard enough and make enough sureties that you can deliver? Now, the thing that you hear a lot right now, and I think there's some truth to that, the Democrats take the black vote for granted. My answer is, if you're a black person, are you going to vote for Joe Biden, or are you going to vote for Donald Trump? Now, let's get to the remark that a lot of people are upset about. Mr. Biden did what I consider to be a cardinal sin. I think is what he was trying to do was be black when he was white. I don't think you should do that. Okay.
Well, Hillary Clinton tried to do that too.
I understand that. Listen, kids out there, if you're white and you're going to run for something, you can't be black. You're not. I think I tried to point that out, when I was writing on my Facebook post tonight. You can be empathetic, you can be understanding, you can stand side by side, you can fight, but you cannot be.
Right.
You cannot be. I'm sorry. You can get close, but no cigar. Just like I can't be a woman, I can't be gay. When I say I can't be, well, of course I can. But I mean, unless I change, I can't be. I mean, I can get close. I can certainly, with empathy and sympathy and understanding and wisdom and all those things. But you can't necessarily be. So you said, if I heard you correctly, basically, at this point, or at least at one point, and I can say at one point, I thought, a black candidate might be the best option for Joe Biden. Now, before we get into this wide-ranging discussion, which may go to 4 or 5 a.m., who knows, I don't have anything to do tomorrow. I do want to point something out, which is such a cop-out, but it's never been so true. Today, we're coming out of this kind of social isolation a little bit down here, and my wife is very good friends with a retired female lawyer who worked with us on the Obama campaign in 2012. And this first time she really felt comfortable coming out, and they socially distanced, and they sat in the park, and I went up to say hi. And of course, we were talking just a little bit with her. And you look at this and you say, this big election, and she shares some of our concerns in terms of Hillary Clinton was not her first choice last time. She did what we did. This time, she's convinced, though, that she doesn't really see anybody on the horizon, a vice presidential candidate that would cause her not to vote for Joe Biden. And I think that's another question. Would I understand if a black person said to me, but Dave, we've been promised the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all we get are dirty grains of sand? Well, yeah, okay, maybe. I would disagree with that, but I certainly wouldn't take it upon myself to argue with him. But I would say, and I think this is the part that I'm saying, hedging bets. Every day in this pandemic is a different day. Brian, I think you can attest to that. When you woke up this morning, did you have any idea that you'll be required, perhaps, as the banker at Bridgeton High School to attend graduation sometime in July if it's held?
Well, I know I have hundreds of checks, refund checks to write. Right.
I know you have hundreds of checks, but did you have any inkling that would happen this
I had no idea, other than I had to brush my teeth and get to the computer by 8 o'clock.
And we learned that today.
Right.
Okay. I learned tonight, just before we went on air, that the pool at our apartment complex is going to be open. Wow. Maybe. Wow. If certain things happen. Well, you know what I mean? That's the world we're in right now. So
right.
Everything we say tonight, I reserve tomorrow to say, but I think I also owe responsibility if that would happen to say why I changed my mind. So I just want to keep that option open tonight. We're talking about today, as we know the world at 8:33 p.m. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, the reason we were late, Brian had an unscheduled stop in the bathroom. Ronnie, his wife, reports to me it was 47 minutes. I don't know what he was doing in there. I have no idea.
Okay.
But that's what happened. So
okay, well, I'm going to give you my 2 cents about the VP. Okay, before we go into the actual candidates.
Right.
I don't think there's any one candidate right now that just comes out at you and says, that's the person that we need. And it's true that if something should happen to a president, that's a very important position. But otherwise, the vice presidential candidate need not be all that. I mean, look, does anybody even
originally one vice president described it, the cleaned up version, not worth a warm bucket of spit, but his actual quote was not worth a warm bucket of piss, and that's a person who held the position. So yeah, I think you're safe.
And not only that, for example, a lot of people, if you would ask them who was the running mate with Hillary Clinton, they probably wouldn't even remember who Tim Kaine was if they died. But I'm looking at it this way. You look at the 10 candidates that we will show you momentarily. I don't think one stands out. One's really no better than the next. And I'm going to relate something that you told me earlier today, that whether you would need the mask or not, you put it on for symbolism because it means something. It says that I care about the next person.
I'm not wearing one now, okay? And let me just use that for a moment, okay? If symbols are important, and I've actually brought a couple symbols tonight I want to talk about later, because symbols, on one sense, they don't mean enough, and on the other sense, they mean too much, right, to us. But I don't know if it ran nationwide, but in the Washington Post today, I thought they had an outstanding picture. Joe Biden and his wife, Jill, yesterday at Memorial Day, wearing masks.
Right.
Honor. And Donald Trump, not. Okay, read into that what you will, right? I'm going to go with the guy who wore the mask right now.
Right. Now I'm going to stop you there because I want to approach that right now, because you're familiar with Brit Hume. He used to work for ABC, and of course now
I used to think Brit Hume was a pretty good news person.
Right.
I think Brit Hume, I don't know what happened to him. I'm not going to speculate on what happened to him, but I will merely say that I do not consider him the great newsman that I thought he once was when he was with ABC News. But go ahead.
Well, I accused him on Twitter of being an arrogant windbag. And he said here, you can read it for yourself, but he says, this might help explain why Trump doesn't like to wear a mask in public. Biden today. Now, how could you...
Brit Hume, metaphorically, for some strange reason, is sucking Donald Trump's cock. Now, I don't mean that literally, of course not.
Right.
But they have, Fox News has some ungodly, well, it's not ungodly, it's very explainable, okay, symbiosis. And Brit, for whatever reason, has thrown his lot in with them. So I think you have to take that with a grain of salt. Now, what I would ask him, could you put that back up just for a second?
Absolutely.
I want to look at that again just for a second. So one of the first things you know or should learn is in journalism, your third day there, is if you make a statement, have some evidence. So let's look at that statement. This might help explain why Trump doesn't like to wear a mask in public. What in that picture explains why Trump doesn't like to wear a mask in public?
Yes, that's simply an ad hominem attack on the way he looks.
Yeah, whatever that, no, I know what that is, of course. But what I'm saying is it doesn't, what it says is,
Right.
It says nothing. Now, if you want to say Joe Biden looks like a simple jerk and a bandit or, whatever, that's opinion, but at least you're saying this is why I think that. Certainly Trump, actually I must give him his due. When he was a young man, he was certainly not a bad-looking young man. He really wasn't. You forget that. Today, wow. So if you're going to say Trump is too handsome to cover his face with a mask, and Joe Biden, I don't know. Brit, if you're listening, if anybody is listening or watching and knows Brit, If anybody wants to call Fox News and ask Britt to come on, whatever. I don't understand what the fuck Britt.
Well, Dave, I called him an arrogant windbag because he did make an ad hom attack, and then I said something like, if Christopher Hitchens were alive today, he would say you're dumber than you look. Let me tell you something else about Britt Hume. You're familiar with my Trumper cousin Jeffrey,
yes,
who lives in Las Vegas. He actually was hanging out with Britt Hume in a 7-Eleven prior to the election, and they're cool with each other, talking about how the Democrats are trying to screw up. So that just gives you an example of the type of person Britt Hume is.
Well, the other thing is too, Brian, and things change. Okay, yes, when I was actually I'm a journalist again, but in a different format. When I was what I would consider a real working journalist, right, in the 70s and 80s, we took great pride in never showing our political views. Never. That was the whole idea. Never. And now that's no longer the case, right? So obviously, I would be suspect of any news person today who said, I'm in bed with. I'd be the same if they said I'm a Democrat and I'm in bed, with Joe Biden. Again, not literally, but figuratively. So yeah, I mean, what does that mean? Now the question becomes, what influence does Britt Hume have? Did anybody listen to him? Does anybody pay any attention to him anymore who's not riveted to Fox News? All right, I don't pay any attention to what Britt Hume says, but I don't watch Fox News either. So, yeah, I mean, that's really going to stick. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because that really bothers me. A journalist who would make that claim that isn't, there was nothing. I mean,
you wouldn't see George Will do something like that. If Britt Hume had intended on...
George Will, I disagree with him all the time. I mean, again, I hate it. Says, oh, I'm a name dropper. Dave Price knows this, or your cousin Joey went out. No. But when you worked at the museum for as long as I did and hung out there, you got to meet a lot of people who made news and wrote the news. And George Will and I were not best friends, okay? But we did, ironically, we did see each other at a Baltimore Orioles game because he's a huge baseball fan, and at a Nationals game. And it was enough to say, hey, and that kind of thing going. George Will and I disagree on a whole lot of things. But here's what we do agree on. Donald Trump is not good for America, and Donald Trump is not good for the Republican Party.
Nor is he good for the world.
Well, we know all. I mean, that's by extension. I should have said that, but it goes without saying. So George Will is what I consider to be an intellectually honest conservative. Okay? Very much like William F. Buckley was. I mean, Buckley had his
David Fromm is another one.
Yeah, I mean, they're good, okay?
Right. There are some good ones.
There's some ones I spent a lot of time...
Fromm. David Fromm. I'm sorry. I mispronounced it. David Fromm.
I mean, I spent a lot of time. I don't now because there's nothing going on there. But I spent a lot of time hanging out at the three major conservative think tanks in D.C., rating them. One is Cato, which is a libertarian think tank. One is AEI, which is what I call the old school, power broker, Cheney, Rumsfeld think tank, Bush think tank. And then
the Trilateral Commission.
And of course, the Heritage Foundation, which is the Tea Party's invention of that. But I will say this, that all of them I found very interesting, somewhat convincing speakers who were well thought out. But at the end of the day, at the end of their talk, I was still liberal, but I appreciated what they had to say. What Mr. Hume said, I don't see any value in it at all. None.
Right, I wanted to show you, too, just though it's kind of interesting. I don't think it's that unbelievable, but this is Britt Hume's Twitter site, and I just thought it was kind of interesting because he is followed by three people I follow. He's followed by Eric Swalwell, Michael Avenatti, and Ted Lieu. Now, obviously, they're all liberals, Dave, and I guess there are liberals who do follow idiots.
You know who I follow?
Who?
Donald Trump on every one of my Twitter feeds.
I don't have the guts to follow him, Dave.
I wouldn't do anything other than follow him. I mean,
I understand it. There's something that bothers me.
I understand, and you have the right to do that. Now, by the same token, I can honestly say I have never watched any Trump broadcast to its completion except his acceptance speech as president of the United States. There's certain things I won't do either, and one of them is I don't watch cable news. I mean, I don't. It's again, it isn't what I consider to be news. And I'll put MSNBC in there. I'll put because it's short. It deals with sound bites. It can't. Even it does some brilliant things if it goes in depth for an hour. When's the last time you've seen a news broadcast spend an hour on one story? Very rare, right? Very, very
Right.
rare. Because they want to get a broad cross section, et cetera, et cetera. But no, Mr. Hume, sorry.
It says here that he's going to block verbal abusers, so I'm sure I'm going to be blocked very soon.
Well, what did you call him?
An arrogant windbag, you.
Well,
I added you at the end.
well, yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. Is that? I mean,
I'm a nobody to him, and I assume he has somebody else
that's
probably
the other
taking
thing.
care of.
That's the other thing that's so interesting. Donald Trump really takes nobodies and makes them somebodies because he's so insecure.
Right.
I mean, I remember, we were taught as journalists, as young rising journalists, you're going to get criticized by everybody, including your mother. You got to get a really thick skin really quickly. And I think it was easier then because we weren't writing so much about ourselves, right? As we do now, we weren't commentating as ourselves. It wasn't cult of personality. If you want to look at something from John Kennedy, from the 1960 60 election on, America, the world, et cetera, has become more and more a cult of personality. And when you're a personality, you take things more to heart, right? I think one of the things I like, and certainly anybody tonight call in and really attack me, I try to pride myself in, so what, so what? It's kind of, and the other thing was an old crusty editor told me, just get him talking about you, just get him talking about you, just get him talking about you.
Right.
And,
well,
it's like,
that
kind of thing. So what Britt Hume said,
I just thought it was interesting.
I think it's great because, again, this is what we've got. Let me hold this one thing up here. I dropped it on the floor.
No, don't! This is a family show. Oh, okay.
I took this off, Stormy. Oh no, that's enough. That off, Stormy.
Okay.
No, what is this, Brian? Describe it to me. Just tell me in your own simplest words. One word.
Well, it's not a turtle, so
now, what
it's
is
a mask.
Can you tell?
Mm-hmm.
It's a mask. Okay. It is just a mask, and it's become a new political symbol for America. If you wear this mask, you are, on one side,
right,
a weenie, a liberal,
snowflake,
a snowflake,
Democrat,
scared to death, a sheeple following, and on the other side, oh, you're a good guy. You're great. It's a damn mask. Now, you have to make a decision. Every American has to make a decision. I've made mine. Science or Donald Trump? I'm going to go with science every single time. Now, it is hard when the science is divided and disputed on masks. They are. Shout out tonight to somebody who is still a friend of mine, even though she also is leaning toward the Trump side more and more, I think. Louise Nichols, we grew up together, which is, we call.
She related to Joanne?
No. And Louise is a nurse, and she can find, and I'm not saying they're not. She posted a couple things that are, why you shouldn't wear a mask from people that are reputable. I check them out, right? Well, that's where the symbol comes in. Okay, I understand. It's why I wear it now. Started out to be protect myself. Then I learned it wasn't going to do that necessarily, and that's fine. But it was protect us. Now it just is a sign that I care.
Right.
Now I've gone, as a writer, I have to do certain things that I wouldn't advise others to do. So with it opening up, I went and interviewed a lot of people this weekend as things started to open up here that didn't have masks on. I felt okay, right? Socially distanced, talking to them. It's a little hard to articulate with a mask on, but it was there, and nobody, not one of them, said a word to me about who you are, why are you wearing this mask, all that. And these were people that I could tell, we did not share the same political opinion. Mm-hmm. So but I think that's what happens with a symbol, And the other thing with a symbol, Brian, we're talking about that. I have another symbol here. This bad boy, right? This is the ultimate symbol of America. I have worn it as a bandana. Worn the proper way. You show respect. I do it this way if I want to say. So it's a flag, okay? But it does, to people, it means more than just a flag, okay? I'm a child of the 60s back there. We used the flag. I never have agreed with You have the right to do it. I've just never agreed with burning the flag. I just never have. You certainly have the right. I would defend anyone's right to do it. I think what you have to understand is it does mean certain things to other people, and you can certainly get your point across without burning the flag, right?
Right.
Just like I would never burn a Bible or destroy a Bible. I think you get your point across without doing it. You don't have to, because that kind of takes away from your point. Now you're a Bible burner, you're a flag burner. Make them listen to your point. But having said that, it still comes back. But the problem with symbols is they take on a life and a meaning of themselves, but you never know what they mean to different people, okay? To the widow of a deceased veteran, that flag may represent her husband, or if the widower, his wife or child. But I find it interesting that all sides can grab it. You watch. I always find it somewhat ironic at the meetings of white racist, Aryan hate groups. We bring the Confederate flag and the American flag, and you often see the Nazi flag there, right?
Right.
Well, those three really don't go together. They're two of them should don't even exist anymore, although they do, unfortunately, in people's minds. But I mean, so again, it's just something, and this election is going to be a lot about. Most elections are, but it'll be about sound bites. It'll be about the selections, and Michael, if you remember, and sometimes it's inadvertent. Michael Dukakis in the tank. If you remember that,
right? Absolutely.
Done. Could have been the
right.
I'm not saying he would have been done because, sometimes it's circumstances. Jimmy Carter and the Iran crisis, the hostage crisis.
Right. That doesn't happen.
And the gas crisis. Who knows, right? Now, Ronald Reagan, for all his faults, and he had many. And of course, again, my biggest thing about Reagan was he was not quite as vacuous as Trump. But I'm not so sure he was a die-in-the-wool conservative. I think he was certainly started out as a liberal. He was very liberal in his early days in Hollywood, and made this, kind of. I don't know if he read the tea leaves and whatever, but he was a great communicator.
And he has a great son, and one of his daughters was Patty Davis.
And
Ron Reagan Jr. He's tremendous.
And the other thing is, like I said, I think. What I would say about Mr. Reagan is, while, again, I know that I have friends who just won't agree with me at all. I do think he brought qualities to the presidency that a president needs. And I would put him in the, okay for president. I would put Donald Trump in the okay for nothing category that I've ever.
Right. Well, he should be in prison. He's a dangerous being.
I'm not going to bet anymore. But if anybody really wants to, I love to eat. And I'm going to eat no matter what, right? So if anybody wants to wager me a lunch bet, I don't know about dinner. It's an expensive dinner. I'll take a lunch bet. Donald Trump will go to jail. I'm going to say tonight, not as president, okay? I think that's also a scary thing. Donald Trump is many things. He appears stupid, but he cannot be as stupid as he appears. And you couldn't get there being as stupid as it appears he is. He knows that his best protection right now for 4 more years is to be president of the United States, right? He knows that there's hotshot prosecutors in New York who are laying a very, very good case, who are political, but aren't, not held back, necessarily by positive. He knows very well that no one, if he's charged in the state of New York or the state of New Jersey, where he had the casinos, he knows good and well that the only person who can pardon him would be the governor of that state. And both of them are currently, positions are held by Democrats who he has insulted. Donald Trump, find out who he hasn't insulted. I don't know. But that's the difference. So will he fight? Oh, he'll fight. It'll be ugly. Doesn't even begin to describe what he.
Okay, we don't know how far he's going to go, or how far the party will go.
Brian, we do know how far he's going to go.
Right.
As far as he thinks he can go to win. Would he assassinate Joe Biden? No. Not him personally. No. Okay? Because actually, in the end, he's a bully.
If he was desperate enough, he would have.
I said him personally. Will he?
No, he wouldn't. He's a coward.
I could shoot a man dead in Times Square, right? Well, first of all, he couldn't do it, but I mean, again, he was speaking metaphorically. But would he stop a plot that heard that someone was going to do it on his behalf? I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, I do want to go through the list. I promised everybody so we're going to take a peek at 10 or so candidates, and the reason why I bring this up, because you yourself, Dave, have mentioned numerous times, and we're in the left-hand corner, Dave. If you look down,
I see this.
Okay, you yourself have said that you just have to win certain states. So if they're coming down to some pragmatism in terms of winning, you'd have to look at each candidate and how that affects the state. So, for example, Kamala Harris, we're going to see her picture in a bit. She's obviously in California, so they've got the state won. So
what I would suggest, Brian, we do is, I'll try to keep my remarks brief, which is difficult for me to do. Mm-hmm. But let's just go with a real quick analysis, pluses and minuses.
Sure. Okay.
Who do you want to start with?
Stacey. We're going to go right with what they see. Right. Stacey Abrams from Georgia.
Right. Stacey Abrams.
Plus minus.
Hot name. Did what many considered impossible. Won an election in Georgia, and it was stolen from her. We don't know that,
correct,
but there are indications. Certainly a hard worker, okay? A new face, all right? Positive sides. Negative sides, to me, not enough experience. If she had 8 years to grow into the job, yes. Now, does that mean I wouldn't vote for Joe Biden if he chose Stacey Abrams? No. Does he have to justify to me why he chose Stacey Abrams? No. I'm just saying, looking at it, I think what she doesn't have outweighs what she does have.
Okay. Again, I agree with you. Does she put Biden over in Georgia? I can't say you can guarantee that, so I would say she's not the one. Let's move on.
Here's another thing. Let me say something else I'd like to address to those that I know. Stacey Abrams would be my pick for a new cabinet position or non-cabinet position in charge of overseeing voting rights in America and making sure that people are not excluded. She's shown a real passion for that. She's very good at that. And sometimes you have to look beyond that. And I know it's hard with people. I mean, if they said tomorrow, Dave, I mean, I'm not interested, but Dave, I know you really want to be the vice president and all that, but you'd really be better doing, X or Y or Z. I wouldn't be, but I think, so I'm just saying, if it were me, I would not choose Stacey Abrams, but I would put her in a very high, almost ask her, what do you want to be in terms of energizing the voters in America, making sure minorities get the opportunity they should get to vote. That's my position for Stacey.
Yeah, we have Susan Rice, who's a polished Obama administration national security advisor, but some people are worried those ties with the Michael Flynn email, blah, blah, blah. She's not tied to any one state.
Yeah, and there you are. Okay. I think with Susan Rice, again, very accomplished. Does she have a position in my administration? Absolutely. Is that position vice president? No.
Okay. Though I do like Susan Rice. So let's move on. All right. Now, this is a person I know very little about. We do know she's from New Mexico. She's Michelle Lujan-Grisham. Okay. They say she's in the mix. I didn't hear about it until the last couple of days.
And you won't, Brian. She is one of these. Now, remember, too, the mix, right? Who's making that mix? Is Joe Biden making that mix? No. Or his advisor? No. The media is making that mix, okay? So, look, I'll tell you a little secret. As a political reporter, I mean, we would make our own suggestions and things. That's a lie, but I mean, this would be a logical kind. And so I think, now, what does she bring? A couple things. Hispanic heritage.
Right.
And a state that if you decided if we have her, we lock up the state. We'll work on New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and excuse me, Minnesota, whatever state, Michigan, right, or Minnesota, whatever. So is she viable? Again, I would say the normal knock on a governor is they don't have the executive experience, correct? But you have Joe Biden, who might have been, at least in working with his president, one of the most effective vice presidents in history. Obama, from what we understand, from what we know, the joke is they had a bromance. I think, I think they respected one another. I think they worked well together. Is that necessary? But right now, governors are hot. All right? Governors right now are hot, meaning that states they understand how important their governors are. Right. So it puts her above the first. I think in my mind, it puts her above the first two candidates we looked at.
But it's not an important
she's necessarily the one. But I think if it came down to, if I if I thought I could win with a Hispanic candidate, I thought Barack and Michelle could hold, the black constituency. Now, when I say hold, I don't mean they have to put things in their platform, okay? But the other thing is, you can't just put in your platform anymore. You have to do them, right? You have to do them. There are enough blacks, there are enough Hispanics, there are enough that are powerful now. Once upon a time, you didn't, right? Now you do. So I don't want to dismiss it as just words, but yeah, I think she is a viable, possible choice.
Okay, let's move on. Val Demings, tough former police chief, congresswoman, handles herself well in the investigations. Really tough. Could have an easy time of it with Pence. She's a possibility. What do you think?
I don't disagree with that. I think, again, if you want to go outside kind of the realm, you know what I mean, in terms of names, just like the New Mexico governor, she's known, but she's not known. So
is she strong enough, popular enough to help Florida jump?
And do you have to win Florida? I mean, look, today the Washington Post ran an article I thought was very interesting. Now, remember, let me go on record as saying I think the Washington Post and the New York Times are not fake news. I think they're legitimate news. But when you get to politics, it's always speculation. It's what people tell you, etc. They did an interesting piece about, and some polls are showing that, Trump's drop of support, and I think it was like an 18% drop in support of senior citizens.
Senior citizens, correct.
These were from citizens who voted for him before, right? And I'm not going to vote for him this time, that they're finding. Does that put Florida more in play? I just think Florida is a state, you got to win it on your own.
And not with the Republican governor like Ron DeSantis, who's already involved in chicanery.
If that's the big thing for Val Demings, I'm not saying it is, right? But if that was, no.
Okay. Let's move on.
Go ahead.
And you've talked about Gretchen Whitmer.
What I like...
I don't know that she can carry Michigan.
No, I think that's the first question, of course. Can she carry Michigan? Again, this is one who really, the next couple months will tell, Brian. She certainly has stood up to people, right? She certainly will have a national battleground because, and listen, guys, hate to tell you this, but you're armed fucking thugs if you go out and try to intimidate a government. You are no better and worse than ISIS on its worst day, because at least they're our goddamn enemy. All right.
Right.
You're internal, national, American fucking terrorists. And was she caught by surprise? Yeah, I think a little bit. But she came right out and said, no more. This shall not happen again. So, again, it comes to...
They wouldn't let that happen in Washington, that's for sure.
Well, that's the hypocrisy of everything, okay? Let Donald Trump hold a press conference where everybody's armed.
Right.
When that happens, okay, then I'll sit down and we'll talk about this, right?
Right. Let's move on to... Now, this is an interesting one. Now, you might blow this one off.
Right now, it's Whitmer's, not Whitmer's to lose, but she's in a very good position.
Okay. Now, this one, you normally would say, nah, she's just a mayor. But you know what? As Philadelphia kind of carries the state of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, if Pennsylvania is going to go to the Democrats, I think this woman here is so important for Georgia because you'd have to have almost every African American coming out in Atlanta. She could do it.
Okay, I hate to burst your bubble there, but there are two things I'm going to say. Do you really need Georgia? And the answer is no. Okay. You don't. Biden does not need it to win. I mean, we're going to be practical here, right? And the other thing that we haven't really addressed, but I think it's important, this is not just about this race, although many of us think it is, right? This is about strengthening the Democratic Party for future races too. There may be a feeling, and she certainly is a what would you say, up and comer, right?
Right.
Who's establishing herself. She certainly has been loyal to Biden. Now, remember, loyalty to Biden is not the same as minute by minute loyalty to Donald Trump. And I think that's important to understand. There's a difference there. It may be looked at that just as I think, and this is just my personal opinion, Stacey Abrams is more valuable to America during the vote, that maybe she's more valuable running for the Senate in Georgia at some point. Because, again, we have to keep in mind, look, honestly, the Senate is in play. The House will remain Democratic, barring something unforeseen.
Right.
I think the presidency is very obtainable. I think the Senate is up for grabs. The one thing that's not is the Supreme Court. That can only get worse. It's 5-4 now, and it doesn't matter as long as Trump's president. It can only get worse. So that all has to factor into it too, right? And then you have to factor in, we don't know this, I'll just throw this out for speculation. I think it's more than idle talk. There's a lot of talk that with a Supreme Court, should it be 6-3 going in, that you expand the number of justices. And there's no law that precludes that. There's none. There's, Brian, which is interesting. I didn't know this until I got down to Washington, D.C. You don't even have to be a lawyer to be on the Supreme Court. There's no qualifications.
Right. I know that sometimes you can, I think in the state of Virginia, if you can pass the bar without having to go to law school.
There's a lot of difference. We always assume, oh, yeah.
At least it used to be that way. It was. I don't know if it's that way now.
It's right now. Everybody is a lawyer and was a judge pretty much on the Supreme Court. But that's, you can go out and pick your barber if you can get or your hairdresser. So right. I think, again, some of these people we're throwing out tonight, is there another place where Biden, the Democratic Party, working together says, yes. And then, of course, there's, will you accept it? The person who's made the most overtures, I really would like to be it. She has whatever she's, is Miss Abrams. Has been the one,
well, listen, Gary has officially scolded us tonight. Gary, it's great, as usual, to see you.
I'm glad
he said,
you're awake.
Jesus, don't you even mention her name? Well, Keisha Lance Bottoms, okay?
Well, yes, Keisha Lance Bottoms. Interesting enough. What would be interesting, Brian, and I'm glad Gary's awake.
What's that supposed to mean?
Well, Gary sometimes has a tendency to sleep in late. I guess 9:05 he's up. He's nocturnal, is what I'm saying. Gary, I spent enough time with Gary to know his best thinking. He's a very good thinker. Is later at night. About this, it's it would be interesting to go out and take this poll and ask people if they would legitimately respond. How many of these people have you even heard of?
Right.
Interesting. I can't. I don't know. I've heard of all of them, but that's me. But yet I would have to say that of all of them, Miss Bottoms is probably the one I know the least. So.
Okay. The next one, we're getting there. Catherine Cortez Masto. Okay. She is
there we
from
are.
Nevada.
There we are.
Nevada's an important state because that one's always back and forth, but not many.
Brian,
electoral college votes.
Dave Price, you only need 3.
Right.
So you have to, again, if you identify, and we don't know that Biden has, if you identify 3, I'm sure Pennsylvania will be one of the 3. On that, I am certain, okay? Because Joe Biden is considered the 3rd senator, and was born in Pennsylvania, and is well-liked in some of the same areas that Trump will. I think Michigan will be one. And then again, does that put Whitmer up or down? I don't know. Nevada, can you win it? Sure. Does that help you win? Is that the state you target?
Right. You make your point. I think you've done it. And I want to cut you off, but you have. Okay. Now, you mentioned much earlier in the show, Dave, that when you're choosing a candidate, are you choosing the candidate to win a state or as really the replacement in case something goes wrong? Number 3, you have Elizabeth Warren. Could she be both, or is it? Well, Massachusetts is locked in.
I think,
but she certainly is a good replacement.
I think with Warren, her pluses are the fact that she's very bright. There's no question about it. I think if I had to, of the people that I've met, of the people down here in Washington, D.C., she is, I think, of any elected official I've met, she may be the most intellectually or naturally gifted in the intellect. That's also her weakness, okay? How does she play with the working class? All this is stuff, we say, oh, wait a minute. No. Look, I'm honest. She was my choice. Okay. She is my choice for president. She wasn't able to pull that off.
Right.
That's fine. That's the American way. I'll tell you where I would put Elizabeth Warren. I would not make her my vice president as much as I would say, Elizabeth, here, listen, I'm going to put you in charge of
Secretary of State.
Of finance and Wall Street.
Well, that would be good. Yeah, I get that.
And you get them bad boys under control, because you know what? We got to do something. Now, the argument will be Joe Biden works for fat cats. Yes, Joe Biden has taken a lot of money for fat cats. Show me anyone in Washington who's been there as long as Joe and hasn't taken that money. But if Mr. Biden is being truthful, if he's saying, I am a bridge, and he said that, I'm a bridge. That's what he said. I'm a bridge. I'm not your guy. I'm a bridge. And they read that the bridge is moving at least off the center, toward the left. Then, attacking money, once you're elected, what are they going to do? Joe does. I mean, honestly, look, I'm not saying Joe's unscrupulous, but if Joe is going to win once, right, and he's not going to run again, if that's true, what does he care? Because one of the problems with winning and wanting to win again is you do have to care about who supports you financially. So I would do that. I mean, that would be what I would do. Whether it's what he will do, I don't know. And I think the age factor works against her as vice president.
Okay. Moving on. Now, this is somebody, I must admit, I never liked Amy Klobuchar during the debates. I found that she was, for some reason, I found her obnoxious, the constant smile. I think she was petty with Pete Buttigieg, and that was one of the creepiest, arguing moments of any of the debates with Buttigieg and her. They were just going tooth and nail at each other. I don't know what was going on. But there are people who think that she can bring in these Midwestern states.
Well, let's look. I think, basically, if I could dare call her Amy, I don't know, well, Miss Klobuchar. I think what it comes down to, and again, it sounds like I'm in favor, I think you look and say, if you decide that is that important, you say, who brings in more, Whitmer or Klobuchar? I think they're actually in competition with each other, not directly as, backbiting competition, but you only have one vice president, right? So if you say the Midwest, the question becomes Klobuchar spreads out a little bit more. Whitmer is there. Again, it gets, do you want another senator? Do you want a governor? Certainly Biden doesn't need another senator. Okay. He is the Senate. All that's good and bad about it.
She is very temperamental, because I don't want to beat a dead horse, but when she attacked Pete Buttigieg, she came right back and gave it to her, and she lost control.
Well, Brian, a lot of that is political theater too. You know what I mean? I mean, you've done that as a teacher, right?
Right.
All the time. Like I was under perfect control.
But Buttigieg wasn't the guy to go after at that point, and she was going after him.
Well, who knows? Who knows why that happened? I'm not defending it. I'm just saying we have to be very.
Well, it was creepy. It was very creepy.
I'm not saying it. What I'm saying, Brian, is we don't know what motivates politicians to do what. Was it a gamble? Was it a risk? Was somebody said if you destroy Buttigieg, and the other thing is, remember, unfortunately, and this will be a way I don't see this ever ending, that if all these 10 people we have up here were running for vice president, they'd be tearing each other apart, right? Because that's the way it's. Look, I love people say, oh, I don't want any more negative ads. Do you really think people would spend that much money? They know what motivates people.
Right.
They know what catches. And it's worse today than it ever was.
Absolutely.
And so they know that. So anything that happens in a primary, actually, I've covered enough primaries to know that basically it's way clean. I'll tell you one example. No two people hated each other more than John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson.
Correct.
The only person who hated Lyndon Johnson more than John Kennedy was Bobby Kennedy. And the only person that they all feared was J. Edgar Hoover. That's all they shared in common. And yet they made a team and they won, right? So, what we got, Kamala left?
Yes, and she's really the odds-on favorite.
Well, again, not when I first looked at the race, okay, and enough people were in. I looked at, I really looked at, even though Warren was my choice, if I were looking to win, and I'd like to make that point, I don't think it's made enough. Look, if you're going to be a politician, there's only one way you can be an effective politician, and that's to win. So to anybody who says I'm not in it to win, they're not in it. All right. The question is not whether you're in it to win. It's whether you take Vince Lombardi's winning, is
Everything.
It's everything, right? Or Malcolm X's idea by whatever means necessary,
right?
Or whether you draw lines and where those lines are. So I'm not real gung ho on that kind of they say. I think Kamala certainly articulate, certainly smart, certainly black, certainly very well.
And this might not mean anything to you, Dave, but in terms of that moment in time, that one debate between the vice presidential candidates, and then she goes after that glib motherfucker, Mike Pence, and then she reduces him and emasculates him. That's an important thing.
Imagine, wow, what a shit show. Kamala Harris against Mike Pence. That's like...
but don't underestimate him. He's very slick.
He's not even living in...
He's a very good public speaker. He doesn't hem and haw.
Fine, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Look, you either accept that he wants a theocracy and you're for him,
right?
And he wants a theocracy. Ladies and gentlemen, he loves Handmaid's Tale, not as a fictional Margaret Atwood tale, as what he thinks
right. Absolutely
should be. He won't even meet with women. With the door.
Right. He wants to be the commander.
What, his penis gets hard whenever a woman's around? What were you telling me, Mike? Come on. That's ridiculous, okay? But anyway, Kamala Harris is a prosecutor, correct? And she's a brilliant arguer. The problem becomes, and again, I'm going to do something I said I shouldn't do, but I am. If you talk to the black community, some of them are a little concerned about her being a prosecutor. Because, of course, if you look at that, too many times, blacks are the defendants, and the white side, police or whatever, on the prosecutor's side. So they look at it that way. There's also a question of, which I don't get, but again, I'm just gonna bring it out there and leave it alone. I think because the black community has to judge that. You hear that question: is he black enough? Okay. Well, I think a lot of people said Obama wasn't black enough, but was really good for America. And I'm not saying he was bad for black. So do you want to go? Okay. So Brian, you're now Joe Biden. I wouldn't ask anything. I won't. You're gonna pick your person, and you can have you don't have to explain it because we kind of went with it. Whom are you going to take of those 10?
Right. And I say this. I think it's a no-brainer. When it comes down to it, you go with your number one pick. It's a lot like the draft in the NBA or the NHL.
Yeah.
You go with
the best talent, right?
Right. You go. What's the one all along that is the thread through it all? If you had to make the choice and you say, okay, I'm not sure where this one could do it and score the touchdown, blah, blah, blah. When it comes down to it, I think the correct choice for Biden, you get your tough person, and she's going to win the debate, and I think she may not be the best, but she'll get the African-American vote out, and that'll be Kamala Harris.
I certainly would not argue with that, but just to propose my choice again today, and this is going to sound so wishy-washy, and I try not to be wishy-washy. Like I said, I'm being honest, not the dream ticket, the winning ticket. I thought initially was Biden and Harris. A little has changed in that, except Biden has gotten the nomination. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Half the tickets there. If it were today, I would actually flip a coin between Whitmer and I think she brings the two that bring the most. Again, California doesn't lose a great senator without a replacement if you take Kamala Harris. Okay. They're well stocked with good people out there.
Right.
So that's not a concern.
Eric Swalwell could run.
There's a lot. Okay.
Right.
It's a Democrat, basically, and getting more so. Michigan, I'm sure there are people that could step in for Whitmer. So why not my girl? My girl. Jesus, was that fucking sexist. Sorry, guys. Why not Miss Warren? I want her to take on that banking industry, and she can't take it on as vice president. She can't even take it on as president. She can do that. I want Stacey Abrams out there stumping this damn country, getting everybody to vote. The others I see as more valuable. So it's not that I'm going to use them.
Okay, well, I do want to show you this, though, Dave.
I'm going to not hedge my bets. I'm going to say now. Ask me 3 weeks from now, 2 weeks. Whenever Biden has to make the decision, it may be much different because, again, in the pandemic times, this is changing states, country, everything daily. Go ahead, Ron.
No, go ahead and finish your point. Go ahead.
That was my point. So I think we did justice. We looked at the candidates. We said what we thought. And you want to know something? Just like this is why I'm not running for vice president. I'd be a terrible one. I'd be an even worse president. Because even how I feel about Donald Trump, when I go to bed at night or every night, I say, you know what? I wouldn't want to be in his position. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be in Joe Biden's position, having to pick. It's much easier to grab a sports cliche. It's much easier to Monday morning quarterback. And they're just our picks. I think that's the other thing that sometimes today in this cult of personality, a lot of pundits. Oh no, it must be this, right? Mm-hmm. No, it doesn't.
Well, if I may, I just would like to show people the kind of person that I think is necessary, because, as you know, just from the title of this show, "Divided We Stand," we're making no illusions here. This country was divided, always has been divided.
I heard some complaints about that. Our title. So later on tonight,
we'll discuss that. But I do want to show this one clip, and this is the kind of thing that I think is necessary. And we're going to see Kamala Harris questioning John Ratcliffe, who's a real asshole, as anybody knows. But you'll see that for yourself. You'll see him squirm. Let's just watch.
Of Director of National Intelligence was created after 9/11 in a reorganization of the intelligence community, and the director has always attracted bipartisan support. Here is Senator Kamala Harris at John Ratcliffe's confirmation hearing.
This will be short.
Do you believe that President Trump has accurately conveyed the severity of the threat of COVID-19 to the American people?
Are you saying presently?
We are in the midst of the pandemic presently, correct?
Right. So repeat the question, because I guess I'm misunderstanding. I'm sorry.
Has he accurately conveyed the severity of COVID-19 to the American people?
I believe so.
You do.
Okay, there. So
Senator Harris,
she fried him, Dave, and this is on many different levels. Yeah, she fried him because
I don't disagree, and I don't know the follow-up to that. But this is a journalistic follow-up. What should have been our next question? I don't know whether it was or not. What should it have been? Every single time. What would you say if you cut it there? What should have been her next question?
We'll give some evidence of what you're saying.
Why are you saying that? Right. Exactly. And I'm not saying she did. That shows that's her skill. Okay. She's very good in that arena. No question. Now you gotta say, well, do I really want a director who's hard of hearing? That was pretty easy question. Are you that stupid, or are you buying time? That was just a terrible response.
But the way she handled it was just wonderful.
Right, she's trained. I'm not taking anything away from her, right?
Oh, hey, look.
No, I know. If you think
there's your A game that we're talking about here.
In that sense, she definitely brings an A game. Hey, I know that dude.
Who's that dude?
That dude is your friend from the Reality Report. I see him on my screen.
Is he here yet?
Yeah.
Hold on.
I see him.
Let me get Paul here.
You hear me?
Hold on.
Absolutely.
There he is.
I hear you.
All right, Paul. Okay.
Sorry for the abrupt kind of crashing of the party, but hey, Dave, I love the job you're doing. You're doing a great job. Love. I listen to you guys every Tuesday that I'm off work, and I think both of you are doing a wonderful job. I want to get that out there.
Thank you,
And
Paul.
I would turn that around. What I like about you and Brian, you notice I was the guest once, and Brian got jealous and would never put me on the crowd to report again. And it was because the ratings were so high that night. And look, Paul, anybody knows that you carry that damn show. Okay? We know that. And Paul, I'm trying. Last week, Brian did his whole show without wearing any pants. Okay. Now, I know that. Tonight we were late on the air because Connie, his wife, told me he was in the bathroom for 47 minutes. Don't ask me what he was doing. So, Paul, as always, it's great.
Only half of that is true.
I was listening to the show earlier on. I'm actually on call tonight, and I was trying to divine the chances I'd be called in, and it looks like I'm okay, at least for the time being.
I just pick up on that. I think that's interesting. Viewers want to know, maybe, like, when you say called in, are you like Batman? What is called in? I mean, I think that's
hospital. Yeah, hospital. You see, hospitals control your life during on calls and such.
Let me say something about that, and then I'll shut up. I'm rarely shut up, but I would say that anybody.
Doctors are on call. Staff.
Anybody who works in a hospital today. We overuse the word sometimes heroes, but they are. But I also think, I hope when this is done in 7 years or 6 decades or whatever this is done, and I don't see it done tomorrow, that I hope we really do have an appreciation that continues more than just thank you. That's all I can do right now. Brian's much richer than you and I. He could send you money, which is really unfortunately, is the American way of showing it.
I got tens and tens of dollars.
Anybody out there who was in Paul's field tonight, anywhere in the world, just not in America, thank you. And I thank you on behalf of the two most important people in my life. That would be Stormy Daniels. No, well, Stormy Daniels pretty cool. It would actually be my grandchildren. And I can't. They're just words, and I wish I could do more. Like we, being senior citizens, Judy and I, we do go shopping at Harris Teeter. Shout out to our local Harris Teeter store. They have Monday mornings 6 to 8, and Thursday we've been Monday mornings. But now we find out we can get an extra discount if we go Thursday. So that's like, not only are we the only people in there, we get 5% off. No, but I look at them and we become friendly. And again, the people, anybody who is out there who's doing a job in the scariest times. Look, Paul, we're I'm a little bit older than both you and Brian, but we know. I mean, there's been scary times in America ever since before there was an America, right? But this is one of them. Okay, so anybody out there doing their job, I give them. I mean, I just get to sit here and mess with Brian and spout off shit I don't know and write even stuff I don't know about. And that's pretty damn easy. But people are out there risking their lives to help others, and that's damn impressive.
Well said, Dave. So, Paul, I wanted to find out from you personally.
To those who work in the ER and the actual ICUs and so on, I think they deserve it better than I. In the meantime, I know, Brian, we're going to get going here, but Dave, you see how Brian's got his background, some kind of like. Some kind of yuppie background. He's got me in a freaking prisoner garage or something. You see my background there? I mean, that's how Brian.
Well, if Dave gets a green screen, I'll give him a Stormy Daniels background.
Tonight, but I hope you come on more because I understand. Is this true that Brian? You were in college with Brian, correct?
I'm sorry?
You were in college with Brian, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you can give us some inside stories. I mean, I've heard some from
absolutely
from his friend Peter, who he says was his best friend. And when we met down here, he mispronounced his last name. So anyway, no. So you can give us some inside dirt, not tonight, but,
I'll admit that I did draw on the walls. Paul knows that. I got a fine, and Joey Fulcher won't stop. Ever since he was 13, he's been reminding me of the fact that I drew on a wall, but it was in self-defense, okay?
Oh, Lord.
So, anyway, going back to the subject, Brian, I was watching you guys, and I guess I agree with Kamala Harris as probably being the one of the better possibilities. As you guys probably know, I'm not thrilled with the Joe Biden candidacy. I will be voting for him. I think it's just a thumb in the dam. That in the hole in the dam. That's all Biden is doing. But you know what, Dave? I'm old, and that thumb in the dam will get me 4 to 8 years of them not fussing with Social Security,
right? Exactly.
Amongst other things. So, I mean, if just for that, I'll go with the Biden and whoever ticket.
And I think, Paul, and I'm not trying to justify Joe Biden as if you were listening or certainly my choice was Elizabeth Warren this time. It was Bernie Sanders in last time. Of course, I voted for Hillary, and I didn't have to hold my nose. I had to hold my nose if I see a Trump sign.
I think we all vote for Hillary here, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that's where I'm. But I think one thing that maybe Biden does provide, and maybe we're beginning to see it, is this is just a theory of mine. But I think sometimes when you're ill, and right now America is very, very ill.
Absolutely. And
ill in a lot of ways that maybe I didn't realize, or none of us, or some didn't. And sometimes, you want to reach out in the past. Like, this is totally reaching, but it's kind of funny. One article that I'm working on now is about puzzles. Jigsaw puzzles are back. And here's a fact for you. The adult puzzles for adults did not take effect until 1900. And in 1908, it became a national craze. So this is the second national craze. And there's a firm that is the leading puzzle maker out of Missouri. And they're actually bringing tractor trailers in to load product to get it out. Their sales are up 2,000% over this time last year. My point being is we're seeing people go back to comfort food, comfort things. I'm always the anomaly. I just keep reading fictional and factual books about pandemics. I know more about pandemics. A lot of the fictional books, of course, have zombies. We don't have that. But no. But the idea of it is a lot of people want that. And Joe Biden, if you like Barack Obama's time, right, which is, certainly comforting to some people, Joe is a return to that. I think the interesting thing to me is, as Brian and I, and I'm sure
well, the market won't crash with him, Dave.
No, no. But the thing is, Paul, I'll ask you directly because, again, we don't want to sound guys out there listening to us. We're a mutual admiration society. What Paul and I share is we both share an extreme distaste for Donald Trump, but even more so for Brian Weinstein. And that's the only thing that's the only thing that unites us. No, but Paul, looking at this, and this is not a purpose for tonight, but I'd like you to come on one night because I think we need to look at the economics, and that's one of my weakest areas. Okay, my son tells me I'm economically stupid, and just because he has a doctorate, and
he's an economist, yeah,
and recruited by Australia to put together a whole school. And I said, well, who the hell paid your bills? So I can't be but that dumb about it. But anyway, no, the idea of it's certainly not an enviable position. But I want to ask you this. Looking back, and this is Biden tonight kind of topic, do you see any way America can recover without some kind of New Deal, whatever that is? I mean, just on its own, do you see any? I mean, no. I should just I shouldn't. Do you see any?
No, I think you put it together. I put the question very well. Absolutely, we need a New Deal. We need an FDR type of New Deal. Is Biden the guy that's going to do it? I can't claim that, but at least we'll have a Democratic-controlled Congress. Now, when I said the stock market, I think the stock market will find Biden generally friendly.
I agree. I agree.
Now, if it crashes, it's only crashing because it hasn't had a chance to exhale. Okay, and that's the only reason why it would crash. But it's not going to crash because of Joe Biden. Okay. Now, all three of us here would love to have Bernie Sanders being the candidate, but it's just not going to be. And if Joe is going to put his thumb into the hole of the dam, at least to keep this thing together for another 4 to 8 years, I'll take that over this guy we've got right now.
I like my shirt too. Thank you, unknown person.
That's probably Joey.
Yeah, no. Now, what I was thinking, Paul, too, is the idea, and again, I defer to your economic expertise. To me, there's always two indicators. The stock market is for those who have some wealth and business, and I'm not going to get into that debate of
No, you're right.
Are business people good or? I mean, they're like everybody else. Okay, I will throw out an astounding piece of information to me. It might be something as you may or may not know. I live in the community Crystal City, which is going to be the East Coast home of Jeff Bezos and Amazon. All right. And Mr. Bezos' first building that he's renting is 3 apartment buildings from where we live. So I get to go by there frequently. And I was putting together a piece I was writing, and I had to do some research on him. And as of last week, he was making $119,500 a minute. Now, I think that he can give me that just for, and then not bother them. No, my point is we're not going to argue about that, all right? But what we are going to say, indicator, is who's employed and who doesn't have a job, and why don't they have a job, and whose fault is it they don't have a job, and they're the two indicators. And I think right now we're in one of those periods for the next X, whatever X time is, like the Depression, where it's affecting everyone, but obviously it's affecting people more if you've lost your job. Should you really care about the stock market directly? And why you should always, it's an indicator. I don't know if that's going to be the main indicator, and I don't know, what will happen with that, but I think that will play into the election.
Mm-hmm. It's probably not the main indicator anymore, Dave. But of course, people still have their 401k funds.
Oh,
and even your pension fund and Brian's. I mean, it's somewhat affected by it. I wouldn't say it's fully, but it is somewhat affected by it.
No, and I think again, that's for another time. And we talk about, Brian's talked about it a lot, and I know you've talked about it on your show with environmentalists. I mean, you guys have a calling, and we're going to kill ourselves.
But we have issues with not on the environment, but on politics.
I'm just saying there are many ways to kill us. We're seeing a pandemic. This pandemic is not killing us. Oh yeah, it is. Okay, but this is not the 95% that it could be if it were worse, right? The other night, one of our friends here, and we socially distance, but we do allow 3 people other than us in the apartment, all of whom are socially distancing from everyone else. And he happens to be a scientist from the National Park Service. And we were kind of playing a game about let's make this worse. How could it be worse? And of course, the death rate could be higher, the infection rate could be higher, it could be out in the air. The things that there's a number of ways to do that. And so, but if you look at that, that's what concerns me, Paul, again, with the economics. We look here, and I base most of my writing on Crystal City in Washington, D.C., so I can't speak to other parts of the country. But restaurants here, the estimate is in Crystal City alone, and there were, let me rephrase that. National Landing is 3 communities, Potomac Yards, Crystal City, and Pentagon City, and the airport is part of that, right? The national airport. And so we have Boeing, we have Lockheed, we have a lot of those here. We have a lot of military from the Pentagon. And there actually were, prior to this, and I didn't eat at all of them, I ate at many of them, 184 eateries here, right? And the estimate is that when this is over, and not over, but when 40% of them will be no more. Yeah. I know personally of 2 that have gone already. And
this is devastating. It's absolutely devastating. Now, in the meantime, Amazon and I can't remember the other one. I think it was Google. Both of their stock prices, as of a week or 2 ago, were 11% higher than prior to the announcement of the COVID. So, the very dominant are doing very well, thank you. And while most of the country experiences extreme disruptions and probably the extinction of their jobs and businesses. No, we haven't even begun to get the full repercussions, economic repercussions of this.
I don't think we will. Brian and I were joking, and I don't mean to make light of a serious subject, but the governor of New Jersey just today announced that graduations can be held in the state of New Jersey in July. To my knowledge, that's the first state who was uncertain. There were some states that were going to hold them no matter what to do that. I think it's somewhat risky, but that I'll defer to his decision. Whatever. But this day-to-day thing. Let's just use New Jersey for example. It's where I was born. It's been 59 years, and Brian chime in too. This weekend it kind of opened up, right? As much as it can right now. You saw people out there. And if the incubation period is 14 days and, you hear more, whatever, all these states, including myself, including here in Virginia, we started to open up a little bit.
It's scary.
In 14
Absolutely.
days, in 14 days, it could be a much different America than we know today. That's how rapidly this thing can change. We don't, and I was talking to a medical person the other day, and I said, I really want you to dispute this, please. I said, if you can. I said, the only thing I can say, and I'm just a layperson in this, is I don't know. and you are in medical. Can you give me anything I know? Anything that she said no. The only honest answer is right now we don't know. How did it originate? How bad will it be? When will it end? Will it end? Are you immune if you get it once? Is it mutating? I mean, there's no answers.
But it doesn't matter with the Trump and the Republicans. Well, they have already set the course. We're going back, and Kudlow's going to give incentives by giving you money to come back, some bonus.
I understand that, and you're a very compassionate person, and I try to be too. But here's the thing:
not for Republicans, I'm not. I hope they go to church.
You play a good game, but the idea of it is, look, as far as I'm concerned, every person today who voted for Trump and is still supporting him, and I don't see many joined after, they're a lost cause. There's no sense. I don't wish them death. I don't wish them. I pride myself as a teacher and as a journalist on my persuasive powers, and I have not moved them 1 inch except to make them more entrenched. So whatever happens there, it's law. I mean, yeah, it's not at all. It's la la land. Okay, Trump doesn't deal with reality. Then there's only two kinds of people: people who are using him and is undealing with reality to make themselves more powerful, and those who are attached to him because they too do not live in reality. They have goddamn guns. Trump's your boy. If you're worried that if you allow abortion, you're all. I never did get this. By allowing abortion, you're going to go to hell. No, if you oppose it and don't have an abortion, nothing's going to affect you. But they want to impose that will. So, Brian, I mean, I'm not. Yeah, I guess I am saying. I really personally, and I don't even waste my breath on it. I've talked about it. I don't really care. They are lost. There are lost causes. If you want to use the medical analogy, there's not even any sense triaging them. We have to look to the people who either are Bernie or other supporters who should maybe be able to reason with and say, I like this whole finger in the dike analogy, Paul, that you made. I think there's also people, the age-old question, which is the first one I would ask. But Vera, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Now, I'm not asking of Trump people. Right. I mean, right. Anybody who isn't committed.
Well, I'm not.
Well, again, this is not.
And that's not even the question, because again, that's a selfish motive. But even if you would ask me the question, I would tell you that I'm not better off.
You run across. People are basically, I'd say I'm
self-serving.
Altruistic, not to that certain extent. It's really, because about what I do, the difference though is about me, is I extend the me. Okay, if the person next door to me, or the homeless people, okay, which we have a lot of here, if they don't get help, they could rob me, they could hurt me. I mean, it's, I want to do good for humankind, but I also think if I don't help educate people, stupid people, and yes, I'm speaking to anybody out there who's a Donald Trump supporter, stupid, ignorant, what I call light switch people, it's either on or off, they can't see shades of gray. Yeah, you're a danger. You're a danger to yourself, to others, to America, to the world. That's it. It's just that simple. So I would, just like I said, don't focus your energy, Joe, if you're listening to me, necessarily on Florida or Georgia or North Carolina, states you may or may not win. Pick your three and win those three and defeat Donald Trump.
Now, you guys are both educators. I was watching a show. It's Professor Scott Galloway. He runs a channel called No Mercy, No Malice. It's somebody. It was what's his name? Chris Davis. Mr. Davis posted it on the Reality Report. Right. Now he's claiming that with the COVID, which is of course is not going away, out of the 4,500 colleges in America, we're over the next 5 to 10 years, we will see 2,000 to 3,000 of them go under. The Harvards, the Ivy Leagues are going to be just fine. They've got a whole waiting list of students that they could dip into, and as they dip into that also reduces the pool of possible students for the mid-range colleges. So the community colleges are going to do fine. They're just job training centers. A lot of our state colleges are just job training centers. Nobody's educated anymore. But it's the high tuition small endowment, smaller mid-range universities are just gonna they'll probably go under. He feels now.
I think you're absolutely. I mean, I think he's right. I think your question, while it was open-ended, I get the impression you may, you're looking for answers, but probably agree with that. And I think that's a very smart thing to say. I think it's this, okay? And again, I was kind of speaking people that I know. So our best friends from Bridgeton, they actually took on the task, very commendable task, of raising their grandson as their son, okay? Or situations. And he started this year at the University of Delaware, right? And Delaware is not cheap for out-of-state students. Again, as if you don't know, not you, but I'm saying anybody out there doesn't know, many state colleges have one rate or one tuition fee for
right. On that score, Dave, if interruption, who pays full rate in college? I mean, who's the largest group of people who pay full rate? It's the foreign students.
Oh,
okay.
Oh, Paul.
And
absolutely.
Any interruption, and there's going to be an interruption, at least a short-term interruption of these foreign students. So that's going to put. And Dave, I know you mentioned Villanova University. That's where you went. So wonderful university. That one, I would say, would be greatly at risk. I mean, the one Brian and I went to, they could pass as a kind of a job training center.
Only thing.
But I think some of the thing like Villanova, for example.
Let's use Villanova. I think it's a great thing. I mean, I actually wrote a piece on that the other day. The idea of it being such a different commencement than I had, and the father there who's in charge, Pete Donahue. The only when I say saving grace, I don't mean that. Is maybe as a Catholic university, if the Augustinians said, we'll sell 4 of our art treasures.
That's true.
I don't know. Yeah. So I worry more about the Antiochs.
Right. Absolutely.
The Bowling Green. I mean, those colleges. I mean,
Kenyon, there's a lot in Ohio. There's liberal arts, small, expensive.
The country that aren't state schools. But just to finish my story real quickly, which dives into what you were saying. So Ethan, who's a child, God, he's 19, has made a decision, encouraged by. He is leaving the University of Delaware and going to come to a state school in New Jersey. Money being, one consideration, but the other one I think that really enters into this is right now. I don't, and again, I know I'm not an expert. I do not see a way that colleges can open in September. I do not. Okay, I do not. Not with full time.
I agree.
I think, Paul.
Not under the current way of doing things.
They just won't. Okay, because let's look at that. Okay, so what are we doing? We're putting people in small communities and trying to isolate. So now you're going to bring them from all over? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Now, having said that, look, there's all varying degrees. Some colleges were very good at online work. I'm going to be old school here, and please, if somebody's new school, please dispute that. There are certain things that you can't replace in the college experience. That would be the mentorship and guidance of a very good older person, right? And you get that in their office, right? Or in their
social aspect too, Dave. Of,
absolutely.
Ideas, all that.
Absolutely. I mean, Paul, I don't know. Pete tells me those stories about Brian when he used to run down the hallway, taking towels off and just running around and saying, "This is what a real man looks like." I mean, you don't find that, community. Right. You just don't find that. But no, it's interesting you say the social. I mean, I think honestly, as far as education is concerned, I don't know when social. I don't really think the social aspect takes a back seat until you start your master's and your doctorate. I mean, I think you're just growing in different ways.
But Dave, remember all the beer parties and,
God,
and all those social on-campus things? I mean, that was part of the the campus life.
I would always tell my students
sororities, fraternities, all that.
Now, is it again? I don't know this is true, and I know this is not the show, but Brian so well. I believe I did some research, and I believe there were 13 sororities at Bowling Green when he was there, and he was banned from 14 of them. Now, how do you get banned from 14 sororities when there's only 13? Can you explain that to me?
No, Paul can attest from
that. Shut up now. Paul and I have a discussion. Go to the little kids' table.
Going to get me thrown off my own show.
Yeah. Oh, I like Paul. There's a difference. No.
But I wouldn't, actually tying together what you're saying, both of you are talking about the proximity, and this is what's going to happen with college. And I know I'm going off on a tangent. But, recently Donald Trump was upset with, quote unquote, North Carolina because he doesn't want to have the convention there because they're going to say that everybody's too close and blah blah blah. I think it's just a ruse. I think that he actually doesn't want to have his convention and he just wants to blame people because he doesn't want to get near people. Do you think that's a possibility?
I'll let Paul go first on that one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was.
Well, just basically, I'm thinking when Trump says that he may have to cancel the RNC because of the Democrats and those who believe that COVID-19 is a real problem. It's just a ruse, and that he's just basically trying to find a way out, not to have.
Back to Trump again. Okay, I wasn't done with the college thing. I was going to point out that.
Wait, look, we're staging a coup. We're taking over the stage the way the military tonight should take over the White House. Get rid of Brian Weintraub. Make America great again.
Brian, you sure it was a good idea for me to come out? What I was saying, Dave and Brian, is that you guys are educators. I feel you guys would be really interested in this stuff. It's they're using Zoom for classes,
right?
And these people with college costs have gone up more than medical costs have over the last 40 years. Okay, it's something like 1,400% or some ridiculous figure. Okay, and for this kind of money, we're getting Zoom. Yes. Okay, we're getting Zoom classes. I mean, this really is the essence of what's going to break the back of many of these universities.
I'm going to use a bad analogy, but it's the first thing that came in my head to agree with you, Paul. All right, so you're going to go buy a car, right? And the car costs $37,000, but it's the car you want, right? And you have to have the $37,000, right? So it's not. So now, are you going to buy that car if it doesn't have an engine?
Exactly.
And that's what Villanova, and I love.
Well, it doesn't have the windshield wipers and the air conditioning.
Shout out! We'll go watch that. 3-time, as I always point out, 3-time NCAA basketball championship. So it's really have no place in college sport. But we'll talk about that for another time. No, but what I'm saying is this: I went my last year. Tuition was $7,500. I graduated in 1973. Today, that Villanova is over $70,000. Now,
incredible, yeah.
Now, here's the thing, Paul. I got a very good education.
Damn right. I think we all three did.
When I chose to, okay, and I mean that literally. I mean, there were times I chose to do other things, right? But it was there for me, and what I partook in was very, very good. My apologies. I tell this story, but I was lucky. My apologies to Dr. Roy. I went to him. They made this ruling when I got there. Well, I don't even know if I would have gone if I knew. We had to take and pass, as liberal arts majors, we had to take and pass trig, calculus, biology, chemistry, and physics. And I went to Dr. Roy as a freshman. I said, and I wish I could do a Canadian-German accent. I can't. But I said to him, Dr. Roy, is there any way I can pass this class? And he said something like this: What is your relationship with God? And I said, what? He was trying to tell me, he says, that's your only shot, right? And Dr. Roy, I want to thank you for that. It was the greatest gift I ever received academically. There were 3 questions on the final. I answered 1/3 of those questions, and somehow he gave me a D-. And I think I probably had 14 out of 100 points correct. But the point is, I mean, so college is a lot of different things is what I'm saying. But it is what you take out of it. But is Villanova worth $70,000 today? Wow.
They'll have to redo their model. I feel grateful because I'm pretty sure that the 3 of us here benefited from a good, well-rounded education, something which our kids today really don't get unless they go to an Ivy League or really a top-tier or top middle tier school. I mean, mostly it's job-based training, and we're reaping really the I don't want to say benefits, but really we're because it's not benefits. We are hurting as a result of this because people just don't have the critical thinking faculty to really parse through all the conspiracy theories. This obviously, the strong base of support
wait a minute,
for Trump.
Paul, wait a minute. You're telling me that 5G didn't bring this pandemic on us? I've been out there tearing down those 5G towers for nothing.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, and the thing is, Dave and Brian, that I was watching another a book review. Someone who wrote a book. I wish I could tell you the name, but
stop for a minute.
He's basically
saying,
now
you're not a Trumper. You read a damn book. Okay, go ahead. I'll listen to it.
Well, he's basically saying that more and more today we've got people who are not challenging authority, not challenging the learned necessarily, but actually claiming that they know as much about the coronavirus as do epidemiologists, that they know as much about these conspiracy theories.
It's like Sean Hannity going after Fauci.
Okay, so I mean, we've got an epidemic of this. It's fostered by social media, YouTube, all of this.
And let's not exempt my friends in the regular media too, because of course, by the way, the nature of the game is now they have to repeat things. You know what I'm just saying? Even if they're debunking them, they have to repeat them. So yes, absolutely. To verify or to not verify, you don't need verification, to support what you're saying. My son is a professor, as both of you know, and he's had some interesting opportunities. A lot of them were luck. We won't go into that. He's good at what he does. But he had the opportunity to teach for 10 years at the University of Chicago, but he was at the same time teaching at other universities. And I'll give you, this was actually it. The one project that I was very proud that he got involved with was he went to Georgia State with 4 other young hotshots to figure out what, if anything, could be done with minority students who were accepted and wanted to take challenging fields, economics, engineering, biology. Was there any way they could get up to where they would need to be? And of course, the findings were no. Okay, they were too far behind when they came in. But I'll give you an example of what happened. So he's teaching, and he would fly back and forth to Chicago to teach his classes for 10 weeks. And so he did his class there, and they're struggling at Georgia State. And he goes out, he teaches his class, and he said, I knew they weren't paying a bit of attention, the Chicago kids, because he said, I wasn't a big name professor to them. Right. I wasn't, I wasn't John List, or I wasn't, whomever. And so he said, I did something I'd never done before. I gave a pop quiz. He said, I said as a teacher, I would never do that. He said, I found them despicable. I think they're horrible. But I just said, every single student failed in this bright class that he had. They all came to his office, and they didn't say, almost to a person, they said this, yeah, we were wrong. We'll do better. He said they all got hundreds. They had that ability. What I'm trying to say is they had that ability to turn it on, right? Which other kids don't. And part of that is the fact that we have dumbed down school. I say this not because Brian is my friend, but he is. I think Brian is a phenomenal teacher. I've had occasion to see him teach, and I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you, Dave.
Not as good as I am, but no one is. But the idea of it is this: one thing we do in common, we never let the test dictate what we taught. See, I never cared about that because you have to make some kind of commitment. And what I was more worried about what you brought up. The thing that is lacking in America today are critical thinking skills. Now, unfortunately, the educators who are coming up with plans, they don't think critically either. Critical thinking involves, as you said, Paul, a very well-rounded educator. Involves taking even though it was painful, it involves taking biology and chemistry. I could have done without the trigonometry and calculus, okay?
Well, the liberal arts too, Dave. I'm going to put a plug for that.
Both sides. That's what I'm saying. I think that's it. If we change business students, I would have fewer business classes and more liberal arts. If I were to change, maybe philosophy classes, which they do mix with theology. But we'll get back to high school because that's really that's kind of the flow.
That's a different animal, yeah.
Yeah, no. But what happens there? We rely on the tests. And I will say this, and anybody's welcome. You tell me the economic statistics about a community, I will tell you their test scores exactly what they will be. Exactly what they will. Not exactly, but I mean within a very margin of error. So what does that say? It says, well, there's a connection between financial security and is it intelligence? No, not necessarily, but it's in what we test. again, I'm not saying what a good buy but I like this. It's one of the few things I did. As Brian could attest, I spent more time in the principal's office as a teacher than I did as a student, and not for good reasons, either time. But I was listening. They had this thing called rigor, Paul. It became very, rigor and rigor, yes, but critical thinking. If it's too rigorous, what you're giving, you can't critically think. And I was just livid about it. So I was asked to do a workshop on it. I did it at some other places, but I did it in Richmond. And I took, I think it was 4 books. So I'll begin with the toughest. I said, suppose you wanted to teach the idea of mankind in war and what changes and that kind of thing. And, that's pretty rigorous. What do you do in war? What's the, that. I said, well, you could start with War and Peace, and nobody would read it. Okay. But you can do great lessons from it if people will read it. Well, then back it down to Red Badge of Courage by Stephen Crane. Sounds good, was actually used as a book. But kids today don't get it. It's in dialect. You know what I mean? They don't know the Civil War. They don't know the back. So you have to teach so much history. I said, back it down. One of the most successful books I taught to my general students. General, for anybody who doesn't know, or those not planning to go to college, although many of them do go to community college. It was called a book called Fallen Angels. I think Walter Myers is brilliant. I think he might have been, I think that my opinion was somewhat certified when he became the first youth writing ambassador for the Library of Congress. He did a book called Fallen Angels, which was brilliant. Black characters, white characters, but basically black characters in Vietnam. And I said, but even that could be too hard for some people. I said, use Dr. Seuss's Butter Battle book, right? And you can teach the same lessons. Rigor, and this is what happens in education. Rigor, they define it as hard, and Brian can attest to this. I did a whole lecture on long and hard.
You paid for that one.
Oh, I didn't pay for it. I just got letters in my file, and said I brought back bad sexual memories, and whatever.
The church lady put you away.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, I think, Paul, I'd love to say this. One last thing, and then I'll shut up, because your point is so important for America to understand, Paul. Your point is so important for Americans to understand, because it's one of the reasons we're in this mess. My granddaughter, she, like all Prices, is of course brilliant and near perfect. No, she goes to Australia now. She's been educated in Atlanta and Tuscaloosa schools. In both, they are award-winning star schools. She's fortunate. Her father is the most overpaid man in America for what he does, so that gives her an advantage. And she had never gotten anything. She goes to Australia. Now, granted, she was in high school because they have a British model, which is 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th for high school. So, but that has nothing to do with it. She was waffled the first day, right? And really struggled because they get at the real critical thinking skills. They don't have the multiple choice tests. They don't have the spelling bees. They don't try. Again, I hate to put my colleagues down in Bridgeton, but this drove me crazy. The history department in Bridgeton was very good, but they were still having people color in maps. Really? Really? Why not pose a thing, about, there's so many teachable lessons. So yeah, is American education in trouble? And Paul, the other thing, which I think is very interesting, okay, what is going to happen to foreign students? Because not only do they provide the financial underpinnings, there's only three. One is, alumni, right? Rich endowments. They are the only students, as you
state funding,
to a certain extent, but not even them. And then sports, right? That's going to be, well, the SEC, they're not bringing in football if they don't bring kids back, right? That's down there. So, but the other thing is, I don't know how you gentlemen feel, but I think one of Trump's major failings, and there's so many, my God, we could do 72 hours just on his top 10. But this idea of, America first, one America, we are one world now. If nothing else, that pandemic shows us that. The pandemic did not originate in America. I'm fairly certain of that, okay?
Right.
I'm not real sure. I think it was Wuhan. I'm not real sure whether it was, bat to monkey to man, whether it was...
Well, it's only spread globally, so...
It's going to...
whatever its origins.
Right. It doesn't matter. And that's also true, though, with solutions. So I'm very happy. We live in a building where the largest... help me out, guys. Mean is the not is like the largest number of something, right? The most of, but not the median.
The mode is something that happens all the time.
So
Median's an average.
if you had to look at the mean, it would be Chinese graduate students, right? We have more of those, not in total number. We have a lot of graduate students here, very, very bright. And they're going to be around to help the world. I kind of like them being here in America, not just for the financial, but the idea, unless they're being sent here as spies or something. So, I mean, I think, I don't know what, we started with, high schools are in trouble. We're in trouble before this makes it even more. Certainly, I guess.
Actually, I see the private education as being more in trouble than the public school system, Dave and Brian. I think Brian, you will be okay. I think there's going to be an outrage. There already is an outrage on the part of parents paying big dollars for private high school, and they're getting Zoom classes and lots of homework.
I'm going to send that. I'm going to agree with you and extend it this far and see if you agree, Paul. And I worry about this. I'm a big supporter of public education. And the reason I am is I think if you pay your tax dollars, unless you choose for religious or other purposes, you should not have to spend your money twice. I think public education, I've always been that.
So many people are doing, yeah.
Oh, no, Paul, exactly. And I understand why. I don't dispute it. Depending on where I lived, I would certainly look into it. But having said that, but right now, I think most people, we go through phases. So at first, it was, oh my God, I never knew teaching was so hard, right? Parents were saying that. And that's good, okay? So then the next was, well, wait a minute. You don't have any work in those two classes? Well, how come? Well, the teacher didn't give us any. Right? Or you have, and if schools come around to September and public schools, and that's why I'm working again with Bridgeton. I never in my wildest imagination believed I would be back there. I'm helping out a former student of mine who's an English teacher handle online transitions, and it's fascinating. It's like the blind leading the blind. I don't know much about it either. I just have more experience.
Brian involved there. He's good at that stuff.
Well, yeah, sort of. But you should have seen this one video he did. It was scary. Again, he didn't have his pants on, but that's.
I had more views for that video on that channel than I did from all the other oones put together.
Think about this, Paul, and Brian, we'll all do this.
But they don't connect.
We're a 37-year-old non-college educated worker with a wife who's 35, with 3 children, and both of us are out of work. And now Brian, who's still in education, is getting paid a full salary. And do you really start accepting that? You start saying, wait a minute, I can't work, and he's getting a full salary, and I'm doing his work in September. We haven't even considered that yet. And I think that's something that's definitely coming.
But let me ask you, Brian, the New Jersey governor came out with, mentioned rather portentously that teachers, that education is going to have to be modified. What do you think you guys, what do you think he was?
I know exactly, and Dave will get into it after I do, but it's already being alluded to from our supervisors. Now, we know already the last 2 months it's all been online, so there's no going back to school this year. But next year, there are different ideas. They don't know where it's going to be. And first of all, since a state budget has to be balanced, it's not going to be balanced. They're going to need federal money, and Trump is going to play this dastardly game of not giving us money or trying to get something out of the Democratic governor, Phil Murphy. He'll do that with other states.
Enough anyway, Brian.
Well, I don't know. So what they may have to lay off people in September or in July. I don't know. This could happen very, very quickly. So there are all types of changes, and we don't even know from one day to the next what's going to happen. Now, Dave could go into this more deeply, but the idea is you may have, for example, 2 different schedules where you have half of the kids here and in the morning and half in the afternoon. How you work out the logistics of that is mind-boggling. And of course, if this pandemic, starts moving up again, we may have to do the online thing and continue and develop that. So you have to have all, your dominoes lined up, because otherwise you're screwed. And it's essentially what happened to us, because we had to turn this thing around on a dime and start learning how to use WebEx, do our lessons, make sure you make contact with the kids. But this is just not New Jersey. This is happening everywhere. So yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, other governors are going to come out. Good thing you're retired, huh, Dave?
So, you know, it's almost sometimes like, I don't know if you ever played this game, guys, but, people say, oh, it's not reality. You're a character in a book and somebody's writing about you. You know what I mean? Like, that's not true. But I mean, we are living. But I always think if they did, man, they've taken good care of me, that author. I always see him to come out. Oh, absolutely. Judy and I talk about that all the time, how grateful we are.
And the three of us got an education before they went and, made job for training, higher education, just a job for training.
My whole life, I haven't planned anything out. I've just been lucky. Again, talking this, I have the last person I suppose I could take any kind of credit for training as when I was a bureau chief at the Atlantic City Press, way back when. And yes, we did ride dinosaurs into work and that kind of thing. Joe Tanfani, he doesn't live down here. He now writes, he has some fancy title. He was trying to explain it to me the other night. Senior Emeritus Writer Project, something for Reuters, right there. He's been with LA Times. He won a Pulitzer with the Miami Herald. He's been with the Philadelphia Inquirer. And I just remember Joe and I used to get drunk as hell in parking lots back in the late 70s. But anyway, now here he is. I mean, I think anybody would know if you were a Pulitzer Prize winning reporter, that's the best you could get, right? I mean, you can't get anything better than that. Now, there's many. You're not the only one, right? So he's at the top of the game. He makes, and he has no job security, and no pension coming in. And I said, well, Joe, he said, well, I've got to write till I'm 100. If I got to write till the day I die, or work until that. And fortunately, I love newspapers. I'm back to doing it, but I'm back to doing it not newspapers, but writing, but with some security that I don't have to make a living from it. So absolutely. And of course people say, well, aren't you worried? Well, no, because look, I hate to say this. I read a thing earlier about how privileged I am in terms of just the fact that I don't want to be graphic, but the fact that, my father's sperm united with my mother's egg, and I was the result. I mean, I've just had benefits out the yin all my life, whether it's white privilege or being upper middle class or whatever. But this idea that if my pension goes and my Social Security goes, well, there are probably zombies. I mean, it's over anyway. You know what I mean? So from that standpoint, when you said, are you glad? Absolutely. Would I want to be employed in this? Absolutely not. Of course not. But I think I wish people, and I don't want to be a doomsayer. People say, oh, you're so optimistic, and usually I am. This, I don't hold out a whole hell of a lot of optimism for the next 10 years. If it changes the way we treat one another, changes the way we do government, if it changes the way, but normally what happens in times like this, Paul and Brian, I think you might agree or not agree, as the case may be. I think sometimes we entrench. I'm kind of glad, honestly, we had Trump for this, because it shows entrenchment and that kind of thing is not necessarily the way to go. Because if we'd had somebody very outgoing and worldwide, oh my God, we'd seal our borders. But no, I mean, I don't know. Short of, that's why I asked you, Paul, when you first came on. I see a creation of something like the New Deal, but even has to be different. I love to eat. Some people, I live to eat, I love to eat. 9 out of every 10 people I know, if you take away the writing business in D.C., I know from restaurants. But restaurants are closed. Well, there's not going to be any coming back, right? I mean, there's not for a long time. So where are they going to, where are going to get the jobs? I mean, what are you going to do? I look out my window here, and my two neighbors are Lockheed Martin and PBS. They're all working from home. Do you really think that they're going to bring back those people in that number and pay what they're paying for those big buildings? I don't think so.
Well, let's take it a step further than that. Dave, you keep saying that, what's the possibility of what's going to happen. What happens if we descend into fascism? I mean, it's like, oh, well, no, I'm not saying you're saying that it can't happen, but everything's kind of leading this way. Absolutely. We don't really have a democracy now.
I'm going to turn it over to Paul. Except we have seen directly, without having Adolf Hitler in, Donald Trump is a fascist. a very poor one, a very weak one, right? He's an authoritarian with no authority and no balls. So maybe, like I said, I'd be more concerned about a descent into fascism if there were a very liberal government and this was being hit. I'll defer to Paul now, but that's all I wanted to say.
Oh, I think it's a major threat to fascism, which grows in the soil of
Here,
ignorance. And we have already spoken about the crisis, the education crisis that we have been facing and will continue to face. That the average American, horrified by the latest social media video, feels that they have equal knowledge with experts. I mean, this feeling is rampant throughout America. Mm-hmm. This is the soil in which fascism grows. And again, this goes back to why we need to get Biden and to get
right.
And out
exactly.
Of it.
Right. No, I agree with it. I just think, well, again, maybe I'm being too naive here. But Paul, you study history quite a bit. Brian, you do too. I do a little bit. Is this analogous to any other period in history? Knowing that nothing, no two periods are exactly the same, right? But some
right.
characteristics.
It doesn't repeat itself exactly,
well,
but there are lessons.
My favorite saying in that, and I got to do it here. Shout out to Mark Twain. Mark Twain gets this quote, and he didn't say it. I can't say who first said it, but I know
Mark Twain.
Mark Twain did not say this. He said something similar, but not this. And I love this quote. I use it at the museum all the time. History does not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And what that means is, you see elements. I mean, obviously, 1918 pandemic, but I don't know.
Yeah, but still, and we get that. But it's kind of like predicting, who's going to win between Ali and Frazier. You don't know until it actually happens. And it only takes one slight little change. I'm not saying we're going to descend into fascism, but we're getting there. And I'm just saying, if we're worried about whether half the restaurants are going to come back or not, I think we have something even bigger.
Suppose he gets reelected, then we're making a major move towards fascism.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no question. Okay, Paul. I mean, anybody who argues that point is a fool. I'm gonna say, as I've said before, remembering that I was wrong 13 times on Donald Trump, so take what I say with a grain of salt. 11 times he made a remark that I said will doom him, and it didn't. I said he could not win the primary, and he did. And I would have bet anything short of my grandchildren that he could not have won the national election, and he did. But having said that, if I had a choice tonight, and my only sole thing in the world that I wanted, that I desired, that would even keep me living, was I wanted to be president, elected president in November 2020. I would rather be Joe Biden tonight than I would Donald Trump. Not because of who they are. I think the path to victory is easier for Joe Biden with this caveat. Of course, that doesn't have to be a completely fair election, but it does have to be somewhat of a fair election. Okay. I would rather be that. I mean, so yes, I'll be first to say, if Donald Trump wins, hell, you can pick any fascist book you think, Brian, you and Ronnie were affected by the plot against America. Well, that's going to make it look like that's going to.
Well, it'll be like The Handmaid's Tale,
The Wizard of Oz,
right? And you know what, this kind of tails into what you're talking about, the mean, the average. The mean is the average. I hope I didn't confuse it, because the median's kind of like there's an equal number to the right and the left, but the mean, the average. I think if the law of averages are going to say that, if you look at history, at least in this country, he's not going to get away with it. But he's broken through all of those.
The incumbent has such an edge too, guys. I mean, do you guys really think that he's not going to win? I mean, he's got to be the favorite.
Here's the thing, okay? What you're saying, I'm not disputing. I'm just saying, here's what Donald Trump did do. Whether you like him, whether you dislike him, whether you despise him the way I do, he has broken the mold for what was normal politics, whatever the fuck that was, okay? Whatever that was. So we are in, use whatever you want, uncharted waters, brave new world, we don't know what the hell one kind of, whatever that is.
Brave New World sounds about right.
Now, having said that, all right, And Paul, I'm certainly not going to dispute ignorant people. But I'll take ignorant people if they're ignorant on my side. I mean, I'm not being somewhat facetious, right? But, you know,
they'll drop away from your side eventually, though, Dave. You know.
Oh, I know they will. But I'm just saying, in this election, I only need them this time. I need them to not vote for Trump and to vote for Joe Biden. And then I think we'll begin to get somewhere where we can have fewer ignorant people. Okay, that's how I'm looking at it. But you're right. I mean, it's extremely. I mean, it's disconcerting. It's frightening. Are you asking? Would I be more concerned about the pandemic continuing or Donald Trump's election? I'd be more concerned if Donald Trump were going to be
right. Right.
No question about that. As concerning, because it'll just be.
That's the prime concern, certainly of the three of us here.
Right. Now, we'll say is, but we don't know how that's going to play out either. I'm not knowledgeable enough to know. I'm sure it had impacts. I have John Barry's book. I did start it the other night. He's probably the definitive scholar now on the 1918 pandemic. But I don't. Obviously, it played out politically, and things will change. But I think again, so you have these two very weird things converging. You have Donald Trump, who's broken the political mold, right? And you have a pandemic, and together we have no clue what's going to happen. We really don't. I mean, I
you don't.
Says they can, and I think it can go any way. I think, to your two gentlemen's credit, I think whatever normal political times are, I think that obviously you said the incumbent power, they have tremendous power. Absolutely, they're very hard to defeat unless there's something greater than them to defeat them, and that may be this pandemic and the conditions. Maybe.
Well, would you agree, Paul and Dave, that the pandemic has helped us? If you don't like Trump, the pandemic has hurt Trump. There's no doubt about that in my mind.
Well, Brian, you on the surface, yes, but how about if they keep handing out stimulus checks up till the election? The stock market remains at stratospheric levels. That they postpone the pain, so to speak, which is what they've been doing.
I don't see Mitch McConnell giving the working man and woman another stimulus check.
Brian, Trump as being a tremendous savior here.
To do that,
I think that's a concern too.
I just wonder. And again, look, I'm not my three building away neighbor Jeff Bezos, but I'm not poor by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, I'm not. I still would consider myself, even though we're falling behind, I'm still solidly middle class and on the upper side of that. Not in the 1% or the 10%. Having said that, $1,200 doesn't mean all that much to me, other than it's $1,200. It would mean a lot more if Judy would let me use it to buy a keyboard.
Right.
She won't, so I have to use it for other things. Now, I don't know what it means to a person who has no money, right? I don't. But I think with today's prices, this is how I view it. I think the Republicans, Democrats were trying to get the best deal they could. I think they were looking at $1,200 in 1918. Jesus Christ, right?
Right.
$1,200 today, what does it do? There are countries that are giving $2,000 a month.
Don't forget the unemployment too, Dave. I mean, they've been very generous with the unemployment.
And again, that's something we can revisit later, because I think in some ways, I'm not a conservative, but I know a person who shall remain nameless who was making was making $125 a week at a part-time job, right? Mm-hmm. Was laid off. Was eligible to get $50, which I thought, that's not gonna. But I mean, that was, and he
buy cigarettes.
Well, he qualified for the $600, right? So he's getting $650 a month, where he used to get $125. Wow, So is that? I mean, right now, yes, it's good for him, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if the Republicans will be willing, or smart enough, or whatever, to give enough money, Paul, to make it, that people will really say, yeah, they've propped us up. I don't know.
Well, they
say what you're saying. I mean, it makes sense. I'm just not sure.
well, the thing is, Dave, remember, they only have to limp towards election, which is just a few months away. Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, but that pandemic ain't limping.
They say that presidents are defined by the crises they face. And here's Trump's crisis, Brian. Now, you were alluding to this, and I'm thinking, this could be skewered to Trump's benefit, where people are feeling, hey, he guided the ship.
There are people saying it.
Well,
I mean, there are people saying it now, right? I
during
mean,
this crisis. I mean, it could actually work to his advantage as well, Brian. I guess that's what I'm saying.
He'd have to do something awfully quick, Paul, because he's failed pretty much all the way through this crisis.
So here's something
$1,200 isn't very convincing. In fact,
if you look deep, yes, he has.
If you look at the money he's given to the big corporations, we'd all be getting a $23,000 check if it were split.
The three of us know this, but I'm just talking about Joe Dumb Voter, okay?
I think he has a better chance, at least in your case where you think there's a possibility that he could win from this. I think there's one scenario that all of a sudden things go crazy, hell broke, and then he has martial law and takes over. That's the only way he wins out of the pandemic. Otherwise, he loses.
In Washington, D.C., next to the Pentagon, that's the thing I'm least fearful of, to be honest with you.
I don't agree with you, Dave, because I
expect you to.
I know you've heard from a lot of reasonable military people who obviously hate Donald Trump, but I know plenty of them just discuss.
You got to have the leaders, Brian. Well, the soldiers aren't going to do it. His support is with the Alabamians, or the Midwesterners who would be supporting
the Holy Rollers.
Look, he's attacked every goddamn major figure.
He's still the commander-in-chief.
No, he is. But you know who the commander-in-chief has?
He has nuclear codes in his back pocket.
Are you ready? Are you going to let me talk there? All right, here we go.
I'm doing what you do.
I know. That's why I like that. Here's how you talk over, right? That's what you do.
How's that, Gary Peacock? I interrupted him. Wouldn't let him talk.
Fine. Listen, here's what you got. And I believe this to be true. Yes, he is the commander-in-chief. But Trump it ain't God, it ain't Melania, it ain't Stormy Daniels, it ain't anybody's ever grabbed the pussy of. It's the Constitution of the United States. And almost, I have faith in the American military more than I've ever had it before, by living and talking to people down here, that if they believe Trump does an unconstitutional move, they will not agree to do it. Time will prove me right or wrong. Now,
it's like thinking that John Roberts will do the right thing.
You always go back to. I said John Roberts will protect his ass. John Roberts, if it's a big case and he knows that it's not, he doesn't want to be associated with that, and he already did it once. He'll do it again, Brian. I'm not saying he'll do it every day. I'm not saying he'll do it on the cases.
He will side with Trump on any issue when push comes, as he has. The Supreme Court has bailed him out in Wisconsin, Mueller, everything with the taxes. Immediately.
I'll agree to that. If Donald Trump loses the election and the Supreme Court puts him in, I'll agree with you.
Well, don't be surprised. Okay, I'm just saying, don't be surprised.
But I'm saying, if Joe Biden wins 3 goddamn states and holds the one that weak Hillary's, we really had. He's not going to lose California, Oregon, and Washington. He's not going to lose New Jersey. He's not going to lose Massachusetts. Virginia is somewhat blue. It's questionable, but we're going to turn out in May.
How did that work in Florida in 2000? You know what I mean? They'll put their finger on the scale.
It came down to Florida. You can't let it come down to Florida.
No, you can't. But he's in charge of the scales.
And I know we go back and forth. Look, Al Gore's probably a very nice guy. I've only heard him speak once. I don't know. Tipper, whatever. They look cute when they were dancing. She lost my respect when she, ran the parents' advisory music thing. But anyway, Al Gore couldn't win the state of Tennessee. If you can't win your own goddamn state,
horrible.
You can't win the presidency.
You're absolutely right.
You should have been able to buy enough votes in your home state to do it.
Right.
And that's the way it is. So again, I don't want to be wrong. Am I swearing I'm right? No. But I think Pennsylvania is very winnable. I think Michigan, not quite as much, but is winnable. So what other state? Do you target 3? Do you pick 1? But you don't mess with Florida. You don't mess with Georgia. You don't mess even with North Carolina. Unless it's
I'm going to create an analogy. Those states are going to be that African American guy's head that had a knee on top of it. That's what's going to happen because African Americans know what I'm talking about. It happens to them personally. It will happen to Whitey too. And when it happens, we're going to know it.
We started this show talking about race. I'll return it. I ask this of any black person in America, and I'm asking as a white person, okay? But I'm asking, you have to answer one question if you are a black American, and only you can answer it. Am I and my people, however you define that, better off with Joe Biden in office or better off with Donald Trump? And that applies to everybody in America, but especially to minorities. And if you're a gay person, I don't see how you say I'm better off with Donald Trump. If you're a black American, you can say it, you can do whatever you want. I don't see how you can.
I'll take that one step further on you.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you that this election is so important that unless the African American vote comes out and comes out and saves the country like they saved Joe Biden, this country will go down. It'll be the African Americans, the minority vote, that will save this country. And this is what many people don't understand.
Well, you know what then? Trump voters, keep doing what you're doing. Racist cops, keep doing what you're doing. I mean, I don't want people to die, but yeah, okay, yeah, that's the game. I mean, if that's what you. I mean, I'll ask. I'll name my students one after. Gerald Still, you're my second son after Michael. If you're listening tonight, Gerald, if you're not in prison for now.
Warren's about your second son.
What about that comment that's
I didn't see it, Paul. What was it?
The martial law is just that. It's not unconstitutional. If chaos is great enough, Americans will be grateful. I don't know the person.
Okay. I like unknown people. Well, the question I would ask that person is, it's not unconstitutional. That is true. Okay. Martial law is just that. If chaos is great enough, so who gets to define the chaos is great enough? Is it President Trump? Is it America?
Or Gary Peacock? Sorry.
Well,
there's Gary.
Gary. I mean, I would ask you. I mean, I think it's a great question. It gets down to who defines the chaos. Is it the president that defines the chaos? Is it the American people that define the chaos? Is it a group of American people? Who defines the chaos? And again, I would say it's not a question of, it's not a constitutional question, but the military, ordered by Trump, do they blindly follow, or do they say this is a made up chaos, or it's not enough chaos, or I'm not going to risk it, or you know what, Trump, you shouldn't have insulted the commander the way you did. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't see I mean, maybe I'm missing the complete point. Look, Donald Trump is the antithesis of Norman Vincent Peale. How to influence people, he's got, but how to win friends, he ain't got. Okay, he ain't got it. If
he has an army.
Means anything. If loyalty means anything to anyone.
Or maybe you should just ask the question, gentlemen. Are Trumpers that stupid that they could win this thing? Is America that stupid? Are there enough Trumpers out there?
Ryan, they came to the Michigan state capitol with guns, okay? You tell me if they're stupid, all right?
Paul, you said...
They're brazen.
The question is, okay, let's play another game, since we're doing hypothetical. And we don't have an answer for this. Maybe you do. Have more potential, no. If you could have a crystal ball and knew someone was going to vote or not, have more Biden votes died of the 100,000 deaths, or have more Trump votes died?
Right now, Biden votes have died, for sure. It's
correct.
Urban votes.
But they died in New York City. New York City's still going to vote Democrat.
Right.
Detroit.
Still going to vote.
In Detroit, they died.
Yes. Chicago. I mean, yes, that's true. But
crowded conditions.
Remember, it's now just getting to Texas. It's now just getting out in the Midwest, right?
Hallelujah.
Well, let's have,
I'm not that nice about it.
I know.
These people want us to die.
The thing is, if Donald, here would be an interesting one. Okay, Donald Trump pulls out of North Carolina, right? There's two options that I see him doing. Well, one. I mean, obviously one is somewhere else, and the other is Mar-a-Lago. And I think he will propose that. I think he will. He's that way. God damn, how much money he could get. Let's give one of these ships like, I don't know, the Grand Princess or something. And let's put them on there for a week. And do you really, it's interesting. we don't know what people will do when you're. It's one thing to strut around and have a gun and say, "I'll take on the military" and all this. When a tank's standing in front of you, like
right, what are you going to do?
That very brave gentleman, whether you agree or disagree with him in China, that's one of the bravest acts of the 20th century. To put your fucking body in front of a.
And by the way, when I was at the coup in Russia, there were total of four Russians who put their bodies in front of tanks during the coup.
That's when we come in. So we'll see what that is. Will people, will people, it's one, okay, bad analogy, I like sports. Build it and they will come. It's not that way in this virus. There are going to be people who won't go back to things they really enjoyed for a long time.
It's changed. It's going to change.
And I don't care who you are, and I don't care, what you say. It's one thing to say, God will provide for me. Well, maybe you haven't lost anybody. I don't know. So, it's just one. It's like we're doing tonight. Okay, we're speculating. It's easy. We don't have to make these decisions. It's fun. But if we were making these decisions for real, we'd have a whole different mindset. And I think, I would just ask. I'd ask anybody who backs Donald Trump, who has the position given to them by Donald Trump. Do you really think he won't can you? I mean, there's no job security there. Doesn't matter who you are, right? Mm-hmm. Are scientists going to back Donald Trump? I don't know.
Well, Deborah Birx is doing a pretty good job of it.
Deborah Birx, again, Brian, you're so quick.
Furious.
And I'm not defending Deborah, but I'm just saying we don't know what she isn't doing. Is she standing there saying, I'll take this hit to making me look stupid to try to help the American people? We don't know that, right? I mean, I'm not saying she is.
No, you don't. But I know what she's done. And it's Fauci doesn't do that, at least not very much.
Look, if you really want courage, Fauci, look, I love him. Fauci should say, Mr. Trump, you're the dumbest motherfucker I've ever seen. People are going to die, and I'm fucking out of here, and drop the mic and walk out.
I get that.
Now, is that wise on anybody's part? No. Okay? So we don't know. I'm sure that Fauci and Birx, I know you don't like, I mean, that's fine. I'm not saying.
I just despise that woman.
It's not a personal thing. It's just there. I'm sure they're saying, my God, if we're not here, this idiot is going to kill even more people. Maybe we can do some good. That's my take. I could be wrong. If they want to call in.
Yeah, that's speculation, and I understand that.
And that's all it is. It's just, I mean, it's I don't think, and I'm guilty of this, especially in the political arena. I don't think anybody has the right to put the motive on anybody else unless that person tells them this is why I did something. Motives are.
But where is the Republican Party's John Dean? You know what I mean? Where? Keep waiting for it. Mueller was a joke.
Mitt Romney's all you got.
And he's half-assed. He can't.
Justin Amash and Mitt Romney. That's about it.
It's nothing.
I know.
It's nothing.
The other thing is, though, and I know I'm not getting secure with this. You go back and you look at the numbers on Nixon. There was a hell of a lot of support till there was no support, right? I mean,
I'm still waiting, though, Dave.
I'm just saying, it didn't go 50, 40, 30. It went 52% to 18%, right? Now, that was the smoking gun moment. That was, Barry Goldwater going in. It was a number of things that we're not going to see.
Well, this is a brave new world, and remember, Leonid Brezhnev had 99% support. So wait until that happens. I know I'm going way. I'm just so angry with what's happening, and you know that.
I'm not saying that's not a bad thing. I mean, to be dispassionate in this, and Paul, I admire your dispassion. I don't mean lack of passion. I'm talking about, you feel very strongly about issues. I worry about myself sometimes, not because of that. I really did believe that, and it's not really my nature, but I learned a very valuable lesson in the classroom. When things get chaotic, you must get calm. You must, because it's your only shot of doing it. And I used to think you could convince people with calmness and reason and logic. I'm sorry, Trump followers that I've seen, I don't know what their motives are, but I know it's not logical, and I know it's not reasonable, and they have their agendas, and that's fine. And I mean, these are people that I've known my whole life. I've had all kinds of different relationships with them. I laughed. I was telling Judy one night, as much as I enjoyed playing with bands, it's hard in South Jersey because there's so many hillbillies and hicks. That West Virginia mentality that most of the band people I played with and spent my life playing with, I don't even talk to now and can't because they're Trumpers.
Paul's been going through the same thing with some old friends.
Well, of course, and they're entitled to their opinion. It's just it's really hard. It's like,
but you have to reevaluate what your friendship was.
It's also this. And I would ask this of anybody tonight that is agonizing over losing friends or family. Did they really mean that much to you?
Right.
If I look at the people that I've lost, right, the people that I really care the most about and liked the most and respected the most, and thought, they're still with me. I mean, not with me, but on my side. The people that aren't, there's a handful. Okay, but I knew they were Republican, or I knew they were conservative, or I knew they cared about money, or I knew one just shocked the shit out of me. It's a friend. We were very, very close. We were newspapers together. She now lives in Texas. I don't know if that's the reason. And we started our last conversation. Look, Dave, I know how you feel, but I just got to tell you right up, I think Donald Trump's doing a good job. And I said, okay, politics are off the table tonight. Let's talk about other things. But at that moment, my jaw dropped. I just didn't see that one coming. So
I can't even get along with people who are on the left who think like I do in terms of the environment, but they can't get this thing that Paul and I were talking about in the last reality report, and that you and I have spoken about. You have to be pragmatic. We're going to lose everything.
Well, that's a question. Look, Brian, I can't speak to the environmental crowd that you deal with, but I know the political crowd that many of them, especially the Antifa people down here that I've met and talked to, they're young for the most part, right? They're idealistic. I was that way too, once upon a time. And it's very hard because it's a very hard line once you move off your ideals to become practical, because you do have to compromise. You do have to sell a part of yourself. You do have to look for the dike pluggers, if you will, Paul. You were very apt in that description. You do have to look for little victories. You do have to understand. I would challenge anyone who thinks, and there are people who disagree with this, but I would challenge anyone to this. If you think America is really bad and needs to move to the left, right? Would you rather move to the left with an America Joe Biden creates, or would you rather move to a left with the America that Donald Trump is creating and will solidify? And I have talked to some people who said, no, I want the Donald Trump because it'll make it easier. And I said, then what you're talking about is armed insurrection. That's the only opportunity there. And I want to talk about this, Brian. It just crossed me again before we sign off, before 4 a.m. or whatever time we sign off. Mm-hmm. This divided we stand. I've really pondered about that. People saying, well, that's kind of a stupid, and I looked into it. Has there ever been a time when America wasn't divided?
Right. Paul, you brought that up, Paul, many times. Right.
Really? I think this is one of those times, though, like, wow, we really are. And that leads me to the possibility, and I suggest this, and I think it's something we should look at. Abraham Lincoln, he said, we can't be divided right now. He was right. We weren't ready to be two countries, right? We just weren't. I mean, we weren't big enough. We weren't established enough. We were too vulnerable to outside, foreign interests, etc. Could we be two countries or more today? Yeah, we could.
I could.
Well,
I prefer to this shit.
Is it? I mean, that'll also something to tell in this election, Paul and Brian. Okay, if it's close on either side, certainly that's going to do nothing to end the division. But even if it's fairly overwhelming, I don't know that eases the division either. You know what I mean? I mean, I really think there's some deep philosophical things, issues, abortion, immigration, guns.
You're going to lose the whole planet with Trump for sure. Dead, case closed. That's it.
There's very little wiggle room there. Okay, you can there's just very little wiggle room, and when there's very little wiggle room, how do you enact? Politics is the art of compromise and statesmanship, and it's not. Politics has become showmanship, which it always was to a certain point. Paul's point,
and that's why I say divided. You have, people say, "Oh my God, how could you say divided we stand?" there is no alternative now. It's the other way. Keep saying it's like Obama waiting for 2 years for the Republicans to come over to his side. If I'm nice enough to them,
Well,
ain't gonna happen, fella.
well, does it? I'll point out to you, and Paul, pick up on this. If Joe Biden were to win, and let's assume that he does get, let's make best case scenario. The House, I think, is going to stay Democratic. I don't see any way.
Right.
And I think the Senate really is kind of a toss up. Depends on how a couple things go. So let's assume he has all that power. Let's assume. So the only thing he doesn't have is the Supreme Court. And I suggested to Brian and others, there's a way around that. You can do what FDR was unable to do. You can pack the Supreme Court. There's no constitutional limit if that's what you want to do. But do you really think the Trump people are going to gently into that good night and accept it? I don't mean armed insurrection, but, there's going to be a lot of hurt feelings, no matter which way.
Because their interests are so dependent on Trump's success.
Correct.
Right.
The Republican parties. I mean, it really is. They will fight tooth and nail.
Correct.
But I do kind of deceive myself, perhaps, in thinking that Biden is somewhat of a acceptable candidate for the business leaders. I may be wrong.
No, I think you are. I think what they don't want, is anyone to the left of Joe Biden, and they perceive the whole Democratic Party as as the other candidates as being to the left of Joe. Certainly to the right of Elizabeth Warren or Bernie. Right? That was their fear, I think. And of course, that's why I was for them. But that's, it's not like you said, Paul. You said it so well earlier. It wasn't their time, And I think too, I've been thinking a lot about this. I mean, there's a place. I like to use biblical, even though I don't believe in organized religion, because I think a lot of people know that. It's like why use parables, right? And I think there's a very great need for John the Baptist types to pave the way for whatever. I'm not sure. And I think Bernie Sanders will go down as one of those types that spoke out when it wasn't popular, that led people down that. I think it's very admirable what he's doing now. It's hard to be a gracious loser, but I mean he is. I don't know what he's doing privately, but publicly he's saying, "Look, we've got to come on, guys. We've got to beat Trump. We've got to do that," which he didn't do. And for whatever reason, and then whatever and Hillary's thing. But again, I just keep coming back tonight, and I'm going to reserve the right to change my mind as soon as this show goes off the air. I'm going to come back tonight. If my life depended on choosing the president or working with the president or who the next president will be, tonight, barring things that I admit are out there, but I can't really worry about what is. I have to see what's out there right now. Joe Biden will defeat Donald Trump in November. That's how I see it. Now,
God, I hope you're right.
Well, so everybody says that. Today, I was telling you, I mentioned the lawyer or the retired lawyer that worked with us, and she's not religious either. And as I said that to her, she says, "What is it they say? From your lips to God's ears, or something like that." And that's that's a. But I mean, I think you do have to face some realities. One of the realities is, where's Trump going to get any votes that he didn't have last time? Where?
Not from real individuals. I think he's going to get them from.
Oh, come on! You can't. The bot chess. So far, did the Russians? They influence the election. Did they vote in the election?
No. Well, look.
I don't know. I'm not raising.
Let me ask you this: 2020. The only way the Russians could actually do something like that is with the help of Republicans who understand their state and their counties and how they could do whatever.
You're going to report Russian citizens over to vote.
No.
How are they going to do it?
Okay. I'll give you an example. Let's suppose that in some district in Ohio, right? Or not even Ohio. Let's just say Pennsylvania, since it's it's going to be a close election. They're going to say, okay, here's what.
Let's pick on Pennsylvania.
Okay. We're going to lose Pennsylvania unless we do something. We've got some people. If you can just do one little thing for us and tell us, where this computer is, and when you plug it in, we're going to have some type of setup that we can monitor something. I'm not, just to me, just because I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. I'm just saying that with some corrupt Republicans' help. And by the way, Dave, I'm not trying to jump on you, but I'm thinking of Devin Nunes. Don't you think somebody like Devin Nunes would be willing to say to some Russian operative, you know what?
Devin Nunes can vote 172 times himself. He ain't going to win in California.
I get that, but you know what I'm saying? A John Ratcliffe in Texas.
There's other answers, and I'm not saying Virginia. Arlington is worried about that. We now have gone back to paper ballots. The only way they can be fucked with. There's one,
and they only need a couple thousand votes sometimes. So you can
I agree.
Suppress.
You got to make
no mail-in voting. A few Russian this or that.
Get African Americans out. We have to get everybody out and make sure that they have to have. There's a 30,000 plurality. Okay. Now, if you tell me they can make up a 30,000 plurality, or if they're going to suddenly turn New York City Republican, yeah, I mean,
and I'll tell you how they do that. How they do that?
Yeah.
Because maybe you're right. Biden wins. Okay? But then all of a sudden, Trump says, I'm not leaving. How do you like that?
Oh, Brian.
Oh, no, it's impossible. He wouldn't do that.
For a man who poo-poos science fiction, you Mr. Spock.
Well,
Spock.
Paul will tell you, you got people in southern Michigan who'll come out.
Not that, Brian. It's not going to happen, Brian. Because here's
okay, I hope not.
Oh, Brian, stop it.
These bastards will do anything.
You're talking about one man saying, okay, I've been in your house. Is that correct, Brian?
Yes.
And you've tried to throw me out. Have you not?
Yes.
Yeah, at least once.
It took a while to get you out.
And did I leave?
And by the way, may I just
leave, Brian?
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Folks out there, I created a short movie called Animal, and it was a 5-minute movie about him going crazy in our upstairs trying to get him out. So that's a true story.
I've seen that film.
I have no problem with it. I'm not embarrassed by anything I did. I stand on it. But here's the thing, Brian. You could have called the police and had me evacuated, correct?
I could have.
All right. Let's reverse it. If Donald Trump doesn't leave and he's not the president, you really think what's he going to get? The Michigan semi-literate militia with their guns to come out? Show me any AK-47 that can beat anything the Army can throw at them. And I'll say, you're crazy, okay?
All right, I don't know. Dave.
No, that to me, I sooner think...
Army wins all the time. I get that.
I sooner think that aliens will come and land in the White House than I do Donald Trump.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
Now, notice, if it's in contention, that's a different story. I'm talking about the moment he no longer won, right?
Okay.
Will he try? Yes. Melania didn't want to be in the first place. She'll just say, Donald, we don't have sex for never again.
Well,
and Donald's like, I'm gone.
Well, if you have to depend on John Roberts to make sure this thing happens, forget it. I'm going to be right.
With the military, okay? I'm going military.
Why haven't they done it already then? If it was that important, why wouldn't they just do it?
Because he's entitled to be in the White House right now. He won the election. Whether the Russians handed it to him, whether Paul and a discussion of ignorance whatever handed to him, he was the duly elected president of the United States. He did not walk over there and take it over. It was not a coup. We can say, we want the other thing is we're prepared now. And if we're not, shame on us. If anybody doesn't think the Republicans will do anything.
I'll give you that. We're more, or at least we're
everybody,
not naive about it.
Yeah, there's no way. I mean, I would expect them to do anything short of nothing. Okay? Nothing. I mean, but we're aware of that. If we can't get the best legal minds and the biggest bodies to be bouncers at the polls, I mean, okay.
Dave, what's the chance of getting that African American vote that we need? What are the chances?
Well, here's how I see it, Paul. And again, I think Barack and Michelle, if you're listening, you really got to come up with something that is very hard to do. Look, they served their time. I can't even imagine what it was like to be called a monkey. right, in the White House. I can't even begin to imagine that. And they were, right? So, if they want to say, man, we're tired, we're beat up, now it's time for our daughters, that kind of thing. I hope they can't, because I think they're the best. They're better than Kamala. They're better than Stacey. They're better than anyone you could get to say to Black Americans, depending on how they put it, look, this is about your legacy. This is about our legacy, in those terms, whatever they choose to do. And look, I'm very grateful. I'm not putting words in a box. I mean, Barack Obama is a much better orator than I am. But if you were to say something like this, like, okay, we made some steps, right? We made some steps when I was there. And now you see what happens if we don't have people like that. And Joe Biden is my brother, okay? Joe Biden, and I don't think he'd be lying with that. I think he and Biden did have, a kind of a bromance. I think they respected one another. I really do. I'm sure they fought and disagreed. So I'm not so worried as some people are, because I do think two things will happen. I think Barack and Michelle and Valerie and their whole contingent will come forward.
I hope you're 1 for 14, Dave.
Whether we like it or not, LeBron James, athletes will come forward. I think actually in this modern age, I think it's interesting. I don't think for the most part entertainers have that much power, but I still think athletes do. If they come forward,
Charles Barkley.
Certainly, if you look at entertainers, he's got Kid Rock and some dead country guy.
Ted Nugent.
Well, Dave, I'd say if Michelle is the VP, he's got it wrapped up. Biden would wrap it up.
I've said that, Paul. I've said that all along.
He would wrap it up.
I think that's asking maybe more than a family should be asked to deliver.
And isn't this show about VP candidates? Come on, it's Michelle Obama would wrap.
Paul, of course. The question is, she has to be willing to do it.
Absolutely.
And if anybody knows, true, that's Gary.
That's Gary.
Yeah, I said. I think. I mean, Gary's right. Gary's always right, except when he's wrong, which is whenever he disagrees with me. But no, the idea of that is, I think. I don't know. I mean, what if I were Joe Biden? Would I ask her? Yeah, every day until she said, "Joe, don't ask me again."
Right.
I mean, I would, and I'm sure he has, but I don't know. I mean, Hillary saw what it was like to be president, and she wanted it. She wanted it before, but she saw Bill, and I think she even wanted it more after. I think there was some. Again, I'm not getting into family disputes, but I think there had to be. She was bright. Bill was bright, but not as bright as her. And there had to be some of hers. She sublimated himself to him, to a certain extent, because at that point it made sense. But Michelle is very much Michelle without being vice president, right? She's content. She smiles. When's the last damn time you've seen Melania smile? So I know neither one of them are going to run. I don't think either one.
That's what she's married to.
Right.
No. Of course, again, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for her. The only time I do for a moment, if what they say is true, the scenario in their room that night when she went ballistic, when she learned that he had won the presidency, and there's pretty verifiable, not evidence, but pretty verifiable stories that she was the most upset because it was like, oh my God, I just want to be a rich wife and ride out the sunset.
Well, rumor has it, Dave, that Stormy Daniels smiles when she's in your company.
She did. I mean, that's not a rumor. My wife just walked in, so saying anything I don't. Like I said, people can read into this what they want. The only thing that Donald Trump and I share in common is we have both seen Stormy Daniels the way my grandfather, the great Walter Lee Price, would have said, the way God brought her into the world. So yes, and we did smile. As I've said before, Stormy, if you're listening, I really thought the fact that you divorced your husband 2 days after we met something. I did find a picture of her today, and I think what it is, she's being influenced by her bodyguards. I think they don't like me, and I think that's really what's happening. I think if we could get rid of the bodyguards, I think we could have something really good. Yes.
Well, all I can say is Stormy Daniels is very lucky that you weren't 18 years of age at the time. because you would have raped her. No, I take that back.
And we joke about that. But I wonder about this, and I'm going to leave my thoughts here.
I do take that one back, by the way. I don't want to.
I don't care about that. What I'm saying is, I do wonder about this. This is an interesting thing because we've talked a lot about the vice presidency, but it's hard to talk about anything because the pandemic overrides everything. I think you would agree on that. I mean, it's the biggest. It's the biggest thing in my lifetime, and I've seen civil rights in Vietnam and 9/11, and it's not like I've lived some. But think about it. I mean, it's kind of a joke, but it's not. Will there ever be a time, or when will be the time, or will I even be able to recognize her when Stormy Daniels would again be allowed to sit on my lap? And I'm being so much facetious about that, but human contact. And I'll leave my thoughts with this because how much of the new world is, because I keep thinking about it. I had two occasions this weekend that really gave me pause. I actually wrote a piece on, which I'm not going to talk about tonight, about the three things that really changed me and my thinking about the pandemic. But I had two more that if I were writing them this week, I would have added. They both happened this weekend. So I was talking to a couple that I knew, a lesbian couple, not that it matters. It was at a gay club, not that matters outside. But it does kind of set you. And this gentleman came up I'd never met, and they knew. And he was older than I am. I'm always so pleased to meet people older than I am because it's just nice that there are people out there. And we were talking, and he just said, "Oh, okay, nice to meet you." And I said, "Oh, I have to leave." And he put out his hand to shake, right? And I had to think about that, right? Do I shake this man's hand? That was what? In February, that was a no-brainer. Maybe as late as March 11th. And now I have to stop and think about it.
Right.
But as bad as that was, this was even worse for me. I was walking around, and I know, interestingly here, and you guys aren't here, I mean, you're in your community, but three groups stand out now because everybody's gone. 60,000. I mean, imagine 60,000 workers coming here Monday through Friday, and now fewer than 1,000, and I would submit fewer than 500 are actually coming in. So you're missing almost 60,000 people a day here that don't arrive anymore. And even of the 22 that lived, a lot of them were students and went home or went back to their countries. So it's a ghost town here. So you see three things. One, you see the Amazon. They're still building, right? And of course, they're all Hispanic for the most part, but they're out there, building and working. So you see them, which before they just kind of blended in. You see a lot more security because our 11 block underground, there's like 5 or 6 things open. That's it. So it's just waiting for people to come. But the saddest group you see is a tremendous increase now. Not an increase, but there's so much more visible are homeless people. And, I always try to make it a point. I don't necessarily give them money, but I try to say, I always try to do this. I think it is the right thing to do, is to give them some kind of awareness that they are human, that I don't look at them as, the old saying there, but for the grace of God, go I. And I think this pandemic shows how fragile it is between, having a home and living without a home. And this one, his name's George, and I've known him, and we kind of have a funny relationship. But the other day I was walking, and there's nobody out there, and I turn around, there's George. He's pretty messed up, as George can always be. And his bottle, not his alcohol bottle. People are really nice here, and they'll give him food and things, like the different stores. So I'm assuming somebody gave him an Arizona iced tea. And he said, "Can you get that for me?" He said, "I'm pretty banged up over here." And I had to stop and think about that. Do I want to pick up that bottle and take it to that man? And I made a decision. Yeah, I do. Now, I love to say I'm brave and, hugged him. And I said to him the same thing I always do to him. I said, "George, remember, I've told you, be safe out here." And he said, "Yeah, that's right. You always did tell me." Because a couple of weeks ago, he forgot there was a pandemic. I'm not making light of that. I'm just saying. And he said, "Yeah, you always do say that." And I said, "Yeah." And he looked at it. I said, "Remember, I also said I don't carry money, so you can't ask me for money, but I'll definitely do this for you." I stayed and talked to him. But when I walked, I certainly didn't touch any part of my face with that hand. And when as soon as I got away from him, I pulled out my sanitizer and did it. And that's the world we're living in. That's the world we're living in. And so I ask everyone tonight, my closing remark is this. In this world that we don't know what it is, that changes daily, that certainly is very dark now, and I think there's a good chance it's going to get darker. They talk about the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm not so sure we're much part past the entrance of the tunnel right now. I don't know. I don't see that. You know, with all that going on,
I think it's the opposite. It's the tunnel at the end of the light.
who do you want as your president? Do you want Donald Trump? And if you do, then vote for Donald Trump. If you want Joe Biden, vote for Joe Biden. And the real tough group, anybody out there hasn't made up their mind, please do, and please vote. I hope, if there's any way I can convince you, call me up. I'm not doing much. Oh, by the way, guys, I said one more thing. I'm so excited. My calendar is not blank now till 2021. I have a dentist appointment June 8th. It's the first thing I put in my calendar since. I mean, that's the uncertainty that we have, right? So certainly call me. I think, and I said this before, Paul, before you came on, and I keep saying I'm going to close, and I talk for 3 hours. I don't mean to, but there's a lot of things I'd like to say.
You're just getting started.
I like to say this to people. Everybody, you can't change the world, but if you feel like I do about Donald Trump, try to find two people, just two people. One is someone you know or you can find out didn't vote last time, and see if you can convince them to vote and to vote for Joe Biden or against Donald Trump. They're the same thing, right? And another is if you know someone, and I'm singling it out, I'm warning you, I'm coming after you, Jan Albertson. If you're listening, and Jan,
yeah, Jan.
Time. You do owe me. If you remember, you smacked me dead in the head. That's another story as a student now. Jan, I admire what you do. I think, I was young once. I understand your frustration with Bernie going down in flames. I understand that. But I would ask you again, do you really want to sit this one out and not vote to keep Donald Trump from destroying what he hasn't destroyed? Because if you think that Donald Trump in a first term was Godzilla, and I think he was burning Tokyo, except this time it was America and the world. Can you imagine Godzilla being 5,000 feet taller? And that's what's going to happen. If Donald Trump gets elected, he believes now that he's invincible. I don't know his relationship with God. I don't really care what his fucking relationship with God is. But I think if anything, he believes now, if you want to use the analogy, I think he believes, if he did, I think he believes he's God's anointed. If he wins, he'll believe he's God himself. I'll end with that.
Paul, would you like to add anything?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you guys allowing me to join your program.
Paul, you're always welcome.
Paul, I would urge tonight now. Every time you can make it, you're always welcome.
Thank you. I would urge voters to employ a type of what Bismarck called realpolitik, and that is you have to, even if you're upset at Bernie's loss, you can't take it out on Joe Biden. We simply have to stop Donald Trump, and a vote for Biden would be the practice of applying realpolitik, and we need to do that at this stage. I mean, I see no other course, and believe me, I thought about as voting for Annie Greensprings. I mean, I mentioned that in our last show, but no, we have to be practical here, folks, and to save the country, we have to vote for Joe Biden. Brian?
And
really
on that
let
note,
Biden have the last word. Oh,
no,
God.
actually, I think it's best to let
Yeah.
both of you. I think everybody knows how I feel about this. I could go on and make analogies with Russia and the black voters in this country, what they've dealt. But I just think in general, you guys have pretty much put it out there what we have to do, and it has to be done. And I think most people know what the right thing is, and hopefully he or she will do it if you're out there. And I don't have a lot of confidence in it, though. I think maybe I'm a little bit too negative about it, but I'd like to be more optimistic, gentlemen. But Dave, thank you, and I hope that you break the streak and you're 1 for 14 on this. Okay.
Yeah, that would. I'll take I'll take the one right in this one because this one's even bigger.
The
This
important
one's a
one.
Super Bowl.
You get
Dave.
this.
The others
This
don't
is
matter.
Yeah,
it.
you're right.
you
It was
know?
just preseason, right? And then you're right. We should do a show on why Donald Trump is bad for sports and why he's bad for all living sentient things.
Right. And Paul, it's always wonderful having you on. So yes, as Dave said, anytime, just come on. I know this is a political show, but I think at least for the next 5 or 6 months, this is going to be the thing. I mean, it is the thing. It's that important. So no matter how many views we get, this is the real ball game. And I think common folk like us should have a voice. And even if it's amongst 20 people, you take what you can get. So, yeah. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. And we'll see everybody next Tuesday. Adios.
Thank you very much.